All right, everybody, welcome back to the latest episode of the DSN Prospect Pod, and the last one, at least unless we manage to find something else we want to talk about before Thursday, the last one before the first round of the NFL draft kicks off Thursday night in Green Bay. We will not be attending, just in case anyone thought that was happening. I'm not going to Green Bay. That is not happening right now. But I will say it is coming to my neck of the woods next year, so I probably will be there in some capacity next year. So just throwing that out there in Pittsburgh. So
Live draft.
I'm only 3.5 hours away.
Yeah, we'll have to try to figure something out. No, but
live show on
live
site
from the draft.
We'll be right next to ESPN. Up there.
Yeah, right next to ESPN's draft show. Yeah, we'll probably find a spot. Just got to use a Pittsburgh chair to park your spot, though, so they know where you're at. For those of you who know what that is, you know. No, but we're not going to be there, but we will be live. Jake and I, plus a bunch of special guests, hopefully. Got a bunch lined up. Dalton will, of course, be doing his actual job to some degree, as far as I understand.
Yeah.
But he will be joining us later in the night, I'm sure, before it's over to
I have an extracurricular for my job.
For his job, yeah.
But I'll be there at the end.
But this will be our last main show before the draft kicks off when we have our live stream. And this one is about going over our top 50 boards. All three of us did our own personal top 50. We have a consensus top 50 for the pod. I will personally, because I'm a masochist, will probably have somewhere between a top 150 and 200 boards sitting while we watch the first round. Most of them won't be brought up, obviously, because it's just the first round. But we'll be talking about that, and then we'll be doing our only real true predictive mock that we're going to do. If you guys have watched the show multiple times throughout the draft season, we've done divisional mocks and things like that, but they've always been what we would do in the situation, right? But this one is going to be collectively what we kind of come to an agreement on we think is going to happen for each pick of the first round, including some trades that I have some ideas for. Maybe you guys have some as well. So we'll talk about that. But first, let's jump into our top 50 boards. I want to start with Jake's actually here, because I feel like you never get to start off with this type of stuff. Because I don't know if it's just because you're on the bottom typically on our layout here or what it is, but I feel like I never start with you, Jake. So I'm going to bring your big board up here on the screen in a second here, and you can kind of just walk us through your kind of thought process, maybe just on the class in general, how you got to your top 50, guys you like more or less than consensus, that type of stuff. But let me pull that up here so we can see that for you here. All right, so it might be a little bit hard if you guys to see this, so just if you have any issues, but we do have now. One spoiler we have is all three of us have Travis Hunter as the top player of the class. So that is one. That's right. I can't believe it. It's one true consensus thing we have is that. Outside of that, it gets pretty weird right out the gate, but. Anyway, Jake, kind of kick us off. What do you think about the class? Tell us about your top 50 in here.
Yeah. I think this is kind of something we've touched on throughout the whole draft season pretty much, but there's not, for me, a ton of top-end talent, as you can probably see if you look at the round grades I have on there. So I found myself looking at this for quite a long time, trying to decide how to rank these guys. It's it says I've only got 5 top 10s on there, so I think pretty much from, I would say about 15 down, I really kind of had to sit there and think about how I'm going to rank these guys. But I feel good about, top 50 so obviously, but I feel good about everyone on here. But yeah, I was sat here for a while trying to figure out how I'm going to rank these guys. I noticed me and Dalton were a bit higher on Shadur Sanders for one.
Yeah, we'll talk about that for sure. Because I think, and you can answer this one for me, Jake, because I know Dalton, I know that you did factor positional value somewhat into your board. Jake, did you take that into consideration much with your years? Okay.
Yeah,
That's
did.
Probably a big part of why there's going to be a discrepancy with, especially mine compared to the two of you. I did mine more about who do I think is truly the best prospect at each spot, and that's kind of how I did mine. That's why I end up lower on certain players, and you'll see that as we go through our top 50s. But good thing to point out, though, Jake, because it is going to be a pretty big discrepancy between some of us on that. But go ahead.
Yeah, as you can see, I only had 2 top 3 grades. Travis Hunter and Ashton Jenney are the only, and Abdul Carter was real close. It was, I kind of consider him in the same boat as those guys, but those three are really the only ones that I feel like super, super confident can develop into stars. I had no doubts there.
Mm-hmm.
Top 10 grades, I feel pretty good about. And then, yeah, kind of as I said, I would say probably from around Sanders and Harmon down. Although I did see today there's some injury concerns with Harmon.
Yeah, I saw that too, and I don't know what that ultimately means for him or what the specifics are, but definitely something to keep in mind. Until we know more, at least for me especially, I'm not changing where I have him on my board, but good thing to keep in mind for those who maybe didn't hear that.
Yeah. But I mean, from Harmon Sanders down, I think a lot of these guys are pretty even, and I would say from once you get to about 15 down, the position kind of matters less to me. It's a lot more at the top of the board. That's why I have Sanders high, because if I wasn't kind of factoring in, and I'm sure Dalton's the same way, if I wasn't factoring in positional value, I don't know exactly where it would have been, but he wouldn't have been as high as 14. But yeah, I don't know. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, it's a lot of players on here that I know we're different on a decent amount of players. So
which is always.
But I can completely understand guys being higher or lower for you, because I think for me it was a lot of them are very kind of similar in value to me.
Yeah, absolutely. There is one thing I wanted to ask you about specifically, because it's one of the things that is unique about your board compared to ours. And we won't see him on our consensus, so that's why I wanted to mention it. You're the only one of us who has 3 quarterbacks on your list, with Jalen Milroe just sneaking on at 50.
Yeah.
Did you feel like you just wanted to get him kind of on the board here, with him being both a quarterback and someone who might go relatively high, or do you just kind of think you might be a little bit higher on him than me and Dalton?
I think, I wouldn't be surprised if he goes in the NFL and he ends up being like the 5th best QB from this class, but I think his potential is so high for me that sneaking him on there at 50, I kind of just felt like I had to have him on there. I don't think it's necessarily specifically just because he's a quarterback as much. I just think if he's able to like truly put it all together in the NFL, I think he can be really, really, really good. So that's kind of why. I think he was my QB4 behind Dart, if I remember correctly. So,
so you had Dart. Did you have Dart on here too?
I don't think I had Dart.
Oh, so you decided to put him on without Dart. Okay. So I didn't think I saw Dart on there, but he was one I definitely wanted to mention. Anyone else you want to shout out as like guys that you think that either you're higher on than consensus seems to be, or lower on? Is anyone you want to start with there?
I would say one guy. I don't exactly remember where you guys had him, but Teddy McMillan. I've seen him get a decent amount of, I guess you could say, slander over the past month or so. I'm still pretty high on him. I would say that's one guy that I've kind of stuck high on this whole cycle. I know he's been kind of sliding down for some people a little bit.
Yeah,
Sanders already mentioned. I really like Luther Burden. I've been seeing him start to slide a little bit.
For sure.
But I like him a lot.
Yeah, I think real quick, I think those 3 guys that you just mentioned, Sanders, McMillan, and Burden, I think they're all 3 really good examples of guys that I think got a ton of hype early in the process, like top 5 hype, and then everyone kind of cooled off, and then there became kind of like an overcorrection on all of them, and they started getting pushed down to like the teens and 20s.
Yeah.
And now I think they're gonna slot back into where they should be.
Yeah, I remember when the Raiders lost, and everyone was mad because like, oh, we can't get Shedeur Sanders first overall.
Yeah.
And now we're talking about him maybe even dropping to the Steelers at 21. So it's kind of crazy. I think kind of like you said. I think when the season's going on and you're not watching as much film, it's a lot easier, especially for me, to be high on guy. And I'm still pretty high on Sanders, but I just think after the season ends and people have time to actually break things down. I think that's kind of why you see guys drop lower like this. I do agree, though. I think with guys like Sanders, it's a little bit of an over correction. I don't think like he should be going as low. I know there's concerns with McMillan. I don't really buy those as much. And then kind of same with Burden. He hasn't really dropped much, but I've kind of slowly been seeing him, I feel like, drop a little bit. But yeah.
Did you guys see those reps of Burden that just came out? Apparently,
I did.
Yeah.
Those reps of coaches, I guess, wanted to see more of his route tree, so they Missouri released some practice footage of him. Man, does not look like just a slot receiver from those reps.
Yeah, he's. I mean, the athleticism. You kind of hope that even if he didn't get to do it much in college, it should translate to a guy that has at least the physical capabilities to become a very elusive and very effective route runner. You should be able to do that. And he showed flashes of it, so it might take him some time. But I do think he's a player for sure that, I see him fall out of the first round a lot. I just can't get there. I don't know if I'm quite as high. I don't think I'm quite as high on him as maybe either of you, or at least you, Jake, but I'm still firmly inside my, first round, caliber players, at least guys who I think will go in the first round of this draft. So
yeah, I've been seeing him as low as the middle of the second round on some monsters. I just don't get that.
Even if you don't believe in him right now as a receiver, athletes like him don't get taken that late at receiver. They just don't. You just don't really see that. Especially guys who have put up numbers that he's put up in the SEC, even though this last year was a down year for him, obviously. He's not getting that far. I just don't think so. Unless there's something unrelated to his tape that's doing it. But no, yeah. So anyone else you wanted to kind of shout out before we give?
I would just say I think now, kind of with today's developments, Derek Harmon is the player I'm most curious about, because I didn't really dive too deep into what exactly the injury concerns are, so I'm not exactly sure at the moment, but I did see people talking about him dropping as low as the 70s, which feels dramatic, but again, I don't really know what the injury concerns are. So I think, because I have him at 15, I'm pretty high on him, so I'm kind of really curious to see where he gets taken now. I still could see him going to the Steelers at 21. That just makes too much sense to me, but
yeah,
I'm just curious to see that. So I guess that's probably the one that I'm most interested to watch come draft day now.
All right. Yeah. So there's one thing I want to mention too, and I'll talk more about it when we get to our top 50 consensus board. But I think, and I may have missed someone who is more so, but I think there's one other player who's really close. But I think the player that we are the most consensus on between the three of us is actually Walter Nolan. I think we all had him within a few spots of each other. I thought that was interesting because he's right around the smack middle of yours at 23 here, Jake. So I thought that was interesting. I think we've all had him within a couple of slots of each other. So we'll talk about that here when we get to the consensus board. But
I think he was he everyone here's DT3?
I think he was my DT4 because I think I had Grant ahead of him. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
I think he's 4 for me also.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I have Grant above him.
Yeah, you have Grant above him too. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
I had Grant at 5, so that makes sense.
Yeah. So there's just a switch there, but yeah. So I think unless there's someone else you want to shout out specifically on your board here, I can bring up Dalton's here instead.
We can go to Dalton's.
Okay. So let me go get yours here. Why? Okay, that's weird. Get out of here, bro. Of course, this wants to be weird right now. There we go. Anyway, okay. There we go. I don't know why Restream decided to crap its pants on me for a second there, but let me open up yours here, Dalton, because yours, no surprise here for those who watch the show, probably had the biggest discrepancy, I'd say, between all of us. At least in terms of where you have guys. And a part of that is because I think you factored in positional value a little bit higher than even Jake did, and I didn't really do it as much.
Yeah,
but still.
I'll kind of explain that a little bit here. So the way I do it is where positional value factors in more is the grade. So for example, a guy that I think is going to be a top 20, if a guy I think is going to be a top 15 NFL quarterback, he's probably going to be a top 10 grade. Just kind of how it is. If a guy I think is going to be to get a top 10 grade as a running back, you probably got to be at least top. I got to feel really confident you're going to be at least a top 5, if not a top 3 running back in the league. Just the way it is,
right?
In terms of value.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of why I have Shador at 3, and why I have Genty a little lower. I believe he is 11 for me. Also, you'll notice where I have the parentheses, that's their positional rank for each guy I had.
Which Dalton was kind enough to do that, where we did not.
Yeah,
I like to use the actual rank.
I did not do that.
I did put the actual rank that I had them in the 50, but
for me, you got to subtract 1 from wherever you see the Excel column. But yeah, I think that's kind of a big one where I deferred. So like the way I do it is positional value factors into my round grade. And then for guys that have the same round, it's basically like how close were they to the next tier.
Right.
So my guy out of like my first round grade guys, my guy with the closest grade to a top 10 grade was Cam Ward. That's why he came in a little higher than some of those other guys.
Right.
Sanders was the closest to a top 5 grade, but I mean, Sanders and Carter, I mean, they are both teetering on top 5 grades for me. My first round grades are the highest grade I give is a top 1 grade, a top 3 grade, then a top 5, a top 10, a first, and a late first. Top 1 is really like, that's where you get into your quote unquote generational prospects. Like Caleb Williams had a top 1 grade for me because he, quarterback was a big factor, and just how much of a sure thing he was kind of why. Hunter, the reason why he didn't get that top 1 grade, because his value is weird. And I think valuing him is really weird because it's a corner and a wide receiver.
Yeah.
And for me, the only thing is I just don't know if he'll ever be elite at either one, or like, I don't know if he'll be a Hall of Famer at either one. That's probably the best way to put it. And like, for example, he's not even my corner 1. That's why Will Johnson is number 2 on my board. I think that's another guy, but we're all pretty high on Will Johnson. This is a pro Will Johnson pod.
It certainly is overall a pro Will Johnson podcast. You're correct. So I knew you were going to probably have him somewhere in your top 3 or 4. So I was not surprised by that for sure. So but he's definitely
my number 2 overall prospect. He was the only guy that got a top 5 grade from me.
I see that. Yeah.
And then like Jake said, though, very, very much the top end of this draft is not great. I mean, I only have 6 guys with a top 10 grade or better. But for me, where I think me and Jake deferred a little bit was I did not get to the late second grades for me in my top 50. I just barely started to scratch the surface of my second round guys. I think I gave out so many second round grades this year. I mean, that was really the late first, second round grades. There's a ton of them. And I mean, I think that's just generally like the meat of this class is from like 11 to picks. You want to have as many picks between like 11 and 75 as possible. That's really where you want to be picking in the draft, I think.
I tend to agree. Yeah.
But as far as guys that I think individually I'm a little higher on than consensus, I mean, I mentioned Shador just because I do think he's really, I think to me, his floor is top 20 quarterback in the league. Ceiling's like a top 10 guy. But some other guys that I'm a little higher on are the 2 Georgia edge rushers.
Yep.
Michael Williams and Jalen Walker. I know you guys talked about on the show. You're a little lower because you have them as tweeners. That's fair. To me, Michael Williams, who I'm a little higher on than Walker. To me, he is less of a tweener, more of a guy that I think could play anywhere from a 4 technique to a outside linebacker. I just think he's very versatile and good enough of an athlete to do a lot of different things. And then Walker, kind of the same thing. I think he can be a very good edge rusher and also just be more of a traditional outside linebacker. or defensive end, depending on what you want him to do. Or he can also play off ball. He really does have a lot to his game. But again, I think those are kind of the main reasons why I defer there. And I think the guy I probably defer the most from you guys is probably Ursary, which I think for me, higher on Ursary, lower on Membu, actually, than a lot of you guys as well. To me, I think I put a little more value in being able to be that franchise left tackle. And I think Ursary really fits that mold super well. I don't have any concerns about his speed. I think he kick steps quick enough that I think he holds up fine. He's never going to be a huge plus factor in run, when you're running the ball, but that's not what you get a left tackle for. That's kind of the way I look at it. I mean, Membu, I think he has the ability to do a lot of different things. I just still worry about him on the outside as a tackle. And I think that's why he got pushed down a little bit for me. But yeah, I think those are kind of the main guys. Mike Green was one that we still don't know how to value him. He got pushed down a little bit for me, just because I think, 2 accusations of that nature. It's a little worrisome.
It's worse than 1, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Which is worse than 0.
Yeah.
You
did have Jalen Milrow, by the way. I forgot you had Milrow as QB3 on yours, so my bad on that one. Yeah, so you did.
Milrow's on there. Yeah, because I have a second round grade on him.
Right. Okay.
That's kind of what allowed him to get in there. So yeah, he's in there. Did not have Dart though in here. But yeah, Milrow. I think Milrow's fine to put in there. Because the potential, and I think Jalen Hurts, the success that he's had really helps Milrow's case.
For sure.
I think it is showing that you don't have to be a traditional, you don't have to throw the ball 50 times a game to have success in this league. And I think if you have a great athlete at quarterback and you do everything else right, Milrow is a guy that you could potentially have a lot of success with.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's it.
A couple guys I wanted to mention for sure that we only see on your list as far as I remember. Harold Fannin Jr., who I don't dislike by any means. He's just not going to be a player that's in my top 50. I feel like with him, I would like to take a chance on him somewhere in the 3rd round is kind of where I'm at with him. I know that there's a lot of things working against him in terms of his profile. But he's hard to ignore when you watch him on film. Like, he just gets it done. Yeah. And I think there's an element of that you have to factor in. But I do think in building a board, he's a guy that I circle as someone I'd like to try to get if I can get him in the 3rd round, but that I'm also willing to let go if someone's willing to take him as high as the 2nd round, basically.
That's fair.
With him.
Yeah. But I had an early 2nd grade on him pre-combine. But definitely the combine was rough. And that's why he got pushed to a 2nd round grade. So he went from being like a guy that I could have seen going like very early day 2 to even like fringe of the 2nd round if a team like really liked him and like thought they could use him.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think for me, the combine tape makes me wonder if he is going to be like a pure H-back type thing. Maybe even have to like transition to more of a fullback, but I mean the tape checks out. The tape really checks out, and I just when you see him again against Penn State, it's hard to ignore that tape.
Absolutely, yeah. Anything you wanted to throw out there, Jake, that you thought was interesting with Dalton's board here?
I like it. I think. I like that we have some variety because
that's
you mentioned
I knew we would, but still it is nice to see.
I know that I think mine might be a little bit more similar to Dalton's than yours, Shayne, but I even though mine and Dalton's are different, I really do like he has Milrow even higher than I do. Yeah, I don't see Fannin the same, but I understand, where that's coming from. And same with having Sanders. I think you had him at 3, Dalton.
Yeah, he's 3 on my board.
Yeah, and I can totally understand that. So,
To me,
I do like that we all have Will Johnson high.
Yeah,
That makes
I
me
agree.
happy.
We are the Will Johnson Truther podcast if we're going to be anything, which I'm happy to be that for sure. So
here's the best way I would justify taking Sanders in the top 3.
okay,
Imagine you are the Jacksonville Jaguars on the clock in the 2014 NFL draft. And you have all the information about how the quarterbacks turned out and how everyone in that class turned out. You have all that hindsight at your disposal. Do you take Derek Carr at 3 overall?
That's a good question, Dalton.
You
should probably defer to Jake because I hate Derek Carr's guts.
I also don't like Derek Carr.
But
I like Derek Carr for about
in reality. I understand what you're saying because in a draft where the quarterbacks were just not good outside of him for the most part. I think Bridgewater could have been a good player had he stayed healthy, but he wouldn't have been probably as good as Carr, probably realistically. At least the high-end plays that Carr is able to do early in his career. But it's a fair point. Now, I'd have to think about who all was in that class and whether I would just not take a quarterback at all. But if we're talking about a quarterback, then sure, it would definitely be Carr at 3 and not Blakethan Bortles.
Real Mac there would make more sense, but
right, exactly. I mean, if we're just talking about quarterback picks, yes, if I'm taking a quarterback, it would probably be Carr in that situation.
I mean, you put him on that 2017 Jags team?
Yeah, assuming everything else plays out similarly, yeah.
That's a Super Bowl team.
Might have already been anyway, depending on who you ask.
Yeah.
So Blake Bortles out there throwing absolute missiles for one whole season. Anyway.
Was he though?
Was that the same year they won a playoff game and he had like 80 passing yards or something?
It probably was. Well, I know this. They beat my Steelers.
I was gonna say they picked off Ben 4 times for the second game in that year.
I hated it so much that Jags team was
how many
as shit.
Shane, I'm sorry, I hate to.
I know. Go ahead.
But over the course of those 2 games that year, how many interceptions did Ben throw to the Jags that year?
I don't know.
I think more than 7.
It probably was about half as many as he threw the whole season. So
it was
probably most of them came against him. Probably game against him.
When they got to the playoffs, I was like, "There's no way they're gonna pick off Ben that many times again."
Yeah, it was tremendously awful. Is the best way I can describe it.
I'm sorry.
It's fine at this point. Good for the Jags. They needed a win at that time, so it's fine. But no, it was not good. Ben did not have their number. I'll tell you that much. It certainly was not his best performances of all time. But no, yeah, I do like your list in general, though. I think it is nice having some, like Jake said, some real discrepancies between us because we see these players differently. Some of them we don't, some of them we do. But just a spoiler for when we get to the consensus top 50 after I go through mine here in a minute. Urshre's on it only because of Dalton.
Yeah.
Dalton got him on there by himself. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I had nothing to do with it. Jake had nothing to do with it.
He deserved to be on.
Right, all him. So he did it. To your credit, Dalton, you got him on there, and I think it was pretty comfortably too. I don't even.
Yeah.
I think it was barely. I think 17.
17. I mean, he's my O tackle too.
Yeah,
my O lineman too. Overall, pure offensive lineman too.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's very fun. But unless there's anything else you wanted to throw out there with your board, I can throw mine up. I can be the party pooper of this podcast because I feel like, especially some of you guys, what you guys think of certain players, I feel like I might be lower on certain of those or a couple of them, so we can check that out here. So let me bring up mine, and here we go. All right. So I do, as I mentioned, have Travis Hunter at number 1, like you guys do as well. Again, my board is going to look a little bit different because I did do this more so on how I view them as prospects overall, not so much positional value, just in a bucket. How good do I think this player is versus the player in front of them, the player like that. That's kind of how I went down the board. So that's one thing that's automatically going to be a little bit different from, especially what you guys did. So you'll see, I don't have a quarterback until Cam Ward at 20. That's kind of how I view him. in this class. I think he's a solid quarterback prospect. I have him ahead of Shedeur mostly for the upside play of things if we're doing this as a quarterback pick. And I wanted to ask you guys this too before I kind of get into some of the other guys here, and you guys can ask me some questions as well. But I ended up with 7 top 10 grades overall. I know you guys had, I think, 6 and 5 respectively.
Yeah.
Dalton was 6, Dalton was 6, you with 5, Jake. How many players do you have in your top 50 as like true first round grades? Like you think they'd be a first rounder in pretty much any draft? Because I have 16 in this class. That's what I have. That's kind of what I settled on is like true first round grades.
I had 24 until I got to my late first round grades.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that include late first?
I'm including like because I have first to second round grades here. These are players like you give me any draft here anytime, no matter how good or bad the draft you think is. These guys are still probably first round picks. That's kind of how I determine true first rounders.
I mean, if I'm excluding my late first grades, because I have a difference between late first and early second.
Right.
But excluding the late first guys, I had 24 with first round or better. Including the late first guys, I had 30.
Gotcha. Okay. So I had combined.
Me and Dalton are almost the exact same.
Yeah, I know.
I had 24 first, and including late first, I had 31.
So if you include my first to second, so these are players from 17 on that I think could or in some cases should be in the first round, but may not be depending on the draft year that they're in. So I had 35 the total of those guys, but most of them are more in that like probably wouldn't be first rounders in most situations tier, honestly, depending on the situation. So that's one thing I wanted to throw out there too. But a couple things that I think is interesting. I do have Armand Membu as my top offensive lineman overall. I went through some more games of guys. I went through some more checks for certain players while I was getting ready for the end of this week, obviously when the draft comes. And to me, he has the highest upside of any tackle in this class, despite him being a right tackle. I kind of don't care about right and left anymore with the way NFL offenses operate. Everyone has to pass protect. Everyone has to run block. There's not nearly as much of that, like turning the back to the defense, having a true blind side. That type of stuff just doesn't happen as much anymore in the NFL. And I think we're seeing that with how tackles are getting paid. Like, the best right tackle is getting paid about the same as the best left tackle. Even offensive guards are starting to get paid closer to the tackles. Like offensive line play in general is being viewed as a kind of more cohesive unit. And if you don't have a good player at all the spots, you might be in trouble anyway. So ultimately, whether you like him as a tackle, whether you like him as a guard, I think he's the best pure tackle in the class. He has the athleticism. He has the size despite the shorter overall frame. He has the arm length that everyone else seems to have, which is fine and not good because that's just how this class is. I just think he's the best overall offensive lineman in the class. With Will Campbell right behind him, who I do think could stick at tackle, but I think his upside, like many people, is higher at guard. So that's ultimately kind of where I landed with those guys.
Shayne, is it fair to say that your Membu love is similar to last year, you being high on Fuaga?
To a certain degree, yes. I think that is part of it. Like, I honestly think Membu is a better player than Fuaga, honestly, in my opinion, as a prospect. Like, I think he has just a little bit more true athleticism, more pass protection upside than Fuaga has. Doesn't have quite the mean streak that I think Fuaga had either in the run game, but can you kind of get offset with the pass protection element of things to kind of make that more even. But yeah, definitely. I like my tackles that are a little shorter, a little more compact because they can have good leverage advantage as long as they have the length, right? I think he has enough length. Those guys they kind of speak to me. I don't know. It feels like they're kind of the meta moving forward for a lot of these edge rushers that are getting smaller. All right, fine. You won't have the leverage advantage if my tackle's 6'3", 6'4". And what are you going to do about it now? Especially if these guys can still mirror. We'll see if that starts to become more of a trend. I also had Tyler Warren as my 4th best player, ultimately. I think I had him a little bit higher than both of you did. I mean, part of it is just he's just such a fun player, man. Like, so many things you can do with him.
I totally understand that.
Yeah, so many ways to kind of incorporate him into the offense. I think the blocking is not as good as I think some people think it is right now, but he has more ability in there than just about anybody in this class because of the frame, the strength. I think he's going to get there eventually, even if it's a little bit spotty right now. Will Johnson, I did have at 8 or 7, which I think is the lowest of the 3 of us, maybe. Yeah. But it's still like he's firmly like a top 10 player for me. If you notice this is mostly for fun and also just and then maybe have to put one here next to Derek Harmon now too. But I did have a little ambulance thing here next to guys who had some injury concerns either during the season or currently have them, just to kind of let you know that I might be a little bit higher on them had they not had that happen, by the way, just to throw that out there for those who see that.
Nice touch.
Yeah, you just gotta have some fun with it.
Yeah.
But some guys that I definitely want to get your thoughts on kind of where I'm at with certain guys. One guy that I know that I'm higher on than all of you even, and also just higher than consensus on, which is unfortunate. Hopefully he doesn't have that injury too severe at least. Derek Harmon is my top interior defensive lineman and one of my favorite players in the class. He's number 8 for me. I think the upside on this guy is just too high for what he's already shown. First year as a true 3-tech type, 5-tech type, coming over from Michigan State as a true nose tackle prior to that. I think some of the warts in his game is missing sacks, blowing tackles in some situations. He just hasn't really been in a position to be an attacking player until this year. I think a lot of this stuff will get cleaned up by NFL coaching, and you just can't really teach the ability to win as a pass rusher the way he did and the way that he's able to move that size. So he's a guy I definitely would love my Steelers to take. Hopefully the injury, whatever it is good. I know for me as well, James Pierce Jr. Was my second edge in this class. There is some stuff with him also, supposedly as far as attitude or whatever, but on the field, reminds me a lot of Brian Burns. I'm a big Brian Burns fan. Kind of feels like that type of player to me. And then Mason Graham, notably, I don't think was super high on any of our lists, or at least as high as he is in consensus. I wanted to throw that out there. We generally, I think, Jake, you might have him the highest, if I'm not mistaken, on your board, Mason Graham?
Yeah, I think I do.
Yeah, we still as a collective are lower on him than I think the consensus draft is. So that's the one I wanted to mention too. But any other guys you guys want to ask me about or just talk about with my board here?
I like that you have Warren that high. I think it's fair. It's interesting. You're the highest on Warren, both out of the three of us. I do, however, I have Warren as my highest offensive skill position player.
Right.
Not quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
I do think he is, if you want an offensive weapon in this class, he is the guy.
Yeah.
He absolutely is, just so good and can do so many things. But yours is interesting. I do like that you had the Pierce one. Yeah, I think that's a good spot for him. If I wasn't higher on the Georgia guys, he'd probably be right there. He's closer to that top tier. I think he's kind of where the cutoff is between the top tier of edge guys and everyone else. I'm not concerned about the legal stuff. I think for him, it's not legal stuff. He's just an asshole.
Apparently he just kind of sucks, which you can live with that as long as he plays.
Is it that bad for your edge rusher to be an asshole though?
Not really. I don't think so. As long as it's not
as long as it's not in the locker room.
Right. As long as it's not unbelievably bad, it's probably fine.
And the greatest edge rusher of all time was an actual monster and a horrible human being.
Correct. So what are you gonna do about it? But no. So a couple other guys I want to throw out actually here. So Matthew Golden is still my receiver 1. He's been that since we did the receiver episode. I do think again he's not far off from the rest of this receiver class, at least the top of it. I think Tet is a really good player. I do view him as a really high-end wide receiver 2 as a complement to a great receiver, or a lower-end wide receiver 1. Definitely worthy of a first-round pick. I think, and we'll talk about this when we do our mock draft, I think he's still going to go in the top 15 at least, even though people seem to have soured on him. But we'll kind of get to that later. Again, I did want to talk about Shedeur Sanders because I know that's kind of the biggest discrepancy, I think, between us in terms of
Shedeur Sanders.
Yeah, at least in terms of players that we all have on our boards, I think it's the biggest discrepancy. Part of that is because I didn't do my board as much based on positional value. It was more so about how I just view each player in the class. But with Shedeur, I've said this on our quarterback show, I've said this other times. To me, I kind of view him as a Teddy Bridgewater type of prospect where I would prefer to take him somewhere in the back half of round 1. I think the ceiling is not high enough for me to justify taking him with the top 15 pick. I think that his ceiling is closer to the 15th, 16th quarterback in the class, which is I think the difference between you and I, Dalton, where you kind of think he could crack that top 10 maybe. And his floor, is not particularly low, but it's also not so high for me that I think that he has no chance of flaming out in the league. Like I think that the arm talent questions, the how he handles pressure in certain situations, the just overall game, if everything doesn't click really well for him, I could see a team quickly moving on from him if it's not working, right? And to me, that kind of lowers the floor a little bit.
That's fair. If he goes to the wrong situation, it could be bad.
For sure. And that's the case with a lot of quarterbacks, to be fair. So, like, it's not really so much a slight on him in that situation. It's more so he does need kind of the right circumstances to be even like a top half of the league potential quarterback. So, I wanted to mention him. Kevin Winston Jr., I know I might be, I think I'm the highest on him because I think you
and I are very close on him.
Yeah, very close. Yeah, I know we're close with him. So he's another guy that, like, I think – you had him in your top 50, right, Jake?
Yeah, he's 40 for me, so I'm not like too far below.
Yeah, I think Winston's literally like 1 or 2 spots below.
Yeah, he was 34 for me.
Yeah, so he's 32 for me. So we're right in the same boat. He's a guy that I think people just are starting to get around to. I've heard his name a lot more recently when I watch like mock drafts and other things. People are like, oh, maybe we'll take Ken Winston Jr. here to like the Eagles at 32, and I'm like, yeah,
because
works.
Now people are actually watching the tape, and it's like, he's actually really good.
Yeah, people watch safeties late, like we did safeties last. Like some of them probably didn't get to him until later because he didn't play this past year very much. Like there's plenty of reasons for it, but I do think it's funny we're getting closer to the draft room. It's like, man, this Ken Winston Jr. guy can play a little bit. No, I think that's pretty funny. I need to talk about it as well. Jalen Walker. 34. When I watch him play, I don't see a guy that I think is ready to contribute at linebacker or edge. And I think he is going to have to kind of pick one to focus on if he wants to maximize the ability to play either one. And even on like the high end of his outcomes, I don't necessarily think you're getting this like true difference-making edge player because I don't know if he's ever going to have the consistent power to win as an edge rusher the way that I think he wants to play. And I also wonder if he does try to play linebacker, like does he have the instincts as a linebacker in coverage? Does he have the ability to kind of run with guys despite being a really good athlete in coverage? He just feels a little far away from me as being a true starter at either position. But the talent level you can't really deny in terms of the athleticism. So I still had to have him pretty far up the board in terms of the top 50. But if he's going to go as high as we think he's going to go, which we'll talk about that when we get to the mock, it would be certainly too rich for me. So that's kind of my short story on Walker at this point. So
Judkins at 36.
So I'll be honest with you, I'm banking on Ole Miss Judkins coming back out when he doesn't have to be the specific role player he was for Ohio State is kind of that grinder for them. Because you watch Judkins at Ole Miss and you're like, okay, I can work with this. This can be a premier back at the next level. But if you watch him last year outside of like some games where it kind of just felt like he wasn't trying to be creative as a runner in 2024, despite showing a lot of that in 2023. And I'm like, what exactly, like, just because you're the grinder of this backfield compared to Henderson, you don't have to run into people unnecessarily. Like, what are you doing? It's like, I'm kind of hoping that, for him to get to be the rank that he is for me, he is going to have to kind of go back to being more of that Ole Miss style player for me. But he's a fun watch, and like the athleticism checks out. Yeah,
he is constantly playing like someone like he has a lit M80 shoved up his ass.
Right, and guess what? As a running back, that's awesome. You want that. Maybe the imagery sucks on that. Not gonna lie, Dalton, but it works. Works is a good analogy there. Also, go ahead.
Yeah, there's one guy that you have that I don't think either of us have.
Yep.
In this section.
Yep.
Josiah Stewart out of Michigan, the edge rusher. I know he had a weird 40 he tested. I don't know what he was doing. He clearly shouldn't have been running a 40 if that's what it was. And also, I heard something about a hamstring thing. Like, point is, I don't care. I watched enough of this dude play. He's an absolute menace off the edge. He's the type of player that I think if you're going to take like a true like designated pass rusher type, he has all the qualities you want from a player who's going to come in on third downs and just absolutely play with his hair on fire and make tackles wish they hadn't gotten out of bed that day. Like that's kind of how I feel about him. And if you can get that somewhere in like the middle of the second round, I'm happy with it. I know that it's technically kind of a role player role, or a role player position if you're going to have him mostly as a designated pass rusher. But he showed enough against the run for his size that, like, I think you can leave him out there as a playmaker, at least as run defender.
Yeah, I didn't watch him, but I do, thinking back, because I think I mentioned it to you guys. I was like, I don't know if it was him or not. Maybe it was the other Michigan edge rusher. But I remember watching the Texas offensive line tape against Michigan, and I was like, there's some guy for Michigan that I'm not familiar with.
Oh, yeah.
Beating them.
It was him. Yeah, he was kicking some ass against Texas. Yeah, you watched USC game, Texas game. He looked like the best player in the field a lot of the time, with it on a field with a lot of NFL players on it.
Yeah,
it's just hard for me to ignore that. Like, I see so much of Nick Herbig as a Steelers fan. Admittedly, that's kind of makes it easy for me to like him. But I think day one, you could put him on the field on third downs and just ask him to get after it, and he's going to beat a lot of tackles in the league who don't have the foot quickness to deal with him. Because he surprises you with power for his size too. That's the thing I think that gets tackled sometimes. Is he can threaten the edge, obviously, it's kind of his main thing, but when he gets his hands in you, despite having a shorter frame, he can knock you back. Like, he has actual legit knockback power, which is kind of like, I thought about putting him over Chandler Walker for a while, but I didn't want to be too crazy, because I think he's a better player right now than him as a pass rusher, but obviously doesn't have the versatility potentially in the overall, like, athletic profile that Walker has. But yeah, he's a fun one for sure. So definitely, if you guys haven't watched him at all, definitely check him out. Also, Dalton, I did something partially for you and partially because I did. Yeah, I did also. I did just like this player more as I watched him. Alfred Collins out of Texas. I did sneak onto the board here. He's a quality interior defensive lineman that has enough athleticism. I still don't think he's ever going to be too much of a pass rusher, but I think he can be a pocket pusher type a little bit. But the length and the strength against the ability against the run, every team needs an Alfred Collins, right? So I think getting him on the top 50 needed to happen. I do think he's going to go in that range as well. So yeah, wanted to get him on the board for you, Dalton. Get a shout out there for you.
You're joining the ranks of people that are getting on the Alfred Collins train. I know Matt Holder was tweeting out clips of him the other day.
Yeah.
You're joining the ranks.
Yeah, so I'll happily throw him on there. But yeah, in general, also I was surprised. I decided that I was going to sneak in the safeties at the bottom here with Watts and Eman Warrior. I just think Watts is too sound of a player and a really good safety that I think could start from day one. And Eman Warrior, the potential, obviously, we talked about on the safety show. I think you have to have him in your top 50 just as an athlete and hope you can develop him from there. So I had to sneak him on, but just kind of barely got him on there. So.
Yeah, definitely lower on the safeties, but
right,
I get it.
Yeah, which I knew you would be, so I figured that would be a fun one to do there. But
yeah,
all right, so let's get our top 50 consensus board up here then, because that's the one that I wanted to kind of spend some time on. Because again, some guys got on that pretty much only got on because of the fact that Dalton had some guys that neither you or I had, Jake. And I think that's really funny. And when there's three of us, obviously. Yeah. It's going to make it more likely for that to happen.
And also, like, guys I was like high on, like to average out, like, yeah, there's a big difference.
For sure. So let me switch this up here. And the top 50 consensus. Let's go. Spend a little bit of time on this one, of course, so that we can kind of see what we think as a whole. So Travis Hunter, of course. Which I can actually bring this up here maybe before we move to the mock draft, but I was trying to figure out a way to do this with like some sort of calculation or some sort of like tool on sheets, and unfortunately I'm not smart enough for that shit, so I couldn't figure that one out. I looked places, everything I got was like not related at all to what I was trying to do, so I said, all right, screw it, I'll just do it manually. So I gave each player a score of between 50 and 1, depending on where they ranked on each of our boards, and mathed that shit out. So Travis was easy because he was just 50 all across the board. But we got some interesting results because of the way that we ranked the players, especially with you guys doing more positional value. Kind of made it closer to maybe what it would be if we all did it a little bit as a positional value as a group. So Travis Hunter again, number 1, clearly. Carter edged out Will Johnson as number 2 only by a little bit, actually, because we all had Johnson pretty high. So Carter did win that battle there, though. Ashton Genty does end up as the 4th player, which this is a really good indicator of like we're Will Johnson podcast because we had him over Genty on their consensus board. So, and then again, usual suspects here. Mason Graham ended up at 8, which I was a little bit surprised by because I knew Dalton and I weren't going to be as high on him, but Jake kind of saved him, I think, from falling out of the top 10 there. So you can thank Jake for that, Mason. For
watching it's also just a weak class. Like everything after overall. Like Warren, I get.
Yeah, it's fair. Malachi Stark's up there a lot because again, for me, I had him pretty high as well.
Yeah, same.
I think you got because again, in a class where there's not a ton of premium players, you have a safety that has the versatility he has and just the overall skill set. Really easy to rank him high in a class like this. Cam Ward does come in because of the fact that was so much lower than standards. He does come in pretty easily as QB1 for us at number 9. Jade Barron finishes at 10, which I think is very, very fun. I think he will go closer to that range than probably consensus had him earlier in the draft season. Tedero McMillan is our wide receiver 1 overall as a group, so not surprising too much there. Will Campbell finishes technically as offensive tackle 1 for us, but like really just offensive lineman 1. Some interesting stuff there. Derek Harmon finishes right about 13, which is where I think he kind of should be on the consensus board anyway, personally. John Campbell at 14. So linebacker class, not so great overall, but he does rank inside our top 15 consensus, so that's a fun one.
I mean, there's 3 linebackers. If you need like an actual like green dot guy, there's 3 guys.
Yeah, exactly. So, but again, Sanders down here at 15, so still top 15 on our consensus, even with me ranking where I did. Emeka Egbuka's one that was fun because I don't think he was this high on any of our boards, but because of how much we were different about different players, he ends up getting pushed up above where any of us ranked him, I think, actually.
That's crazy.
Which for him honestly makes sense because he is getting underrated in a class where like people are like, oh, we need to find something of actual like super interesting note here because there's so many players that aren't that like great actually. He is just you know what you're getting. You know what you're getting with Emeka Egbuka. You know. It's really easy to like Egbuka. So I'm glad he ended up there. Colson Loveland right behind him. I think that's pretty fun because those two could be battling for who kind of goes off the board in the 20s potentially if one of them doesn't go higher. Jalen Walker ends up kind of closer to where he probably should be, in my opinion, which is funny. 20 here for us as consensus. Like I'd be more willing to accept that type of thing. So Walter Nolan finished 24th. When I think he was like either 24th or like 26th or 20, like he was literally like almost identical on all our boards. It's very funny. You guys definitely killed me with Matthew Golden, made me sad a little bit. Getting him down here, but I'm okay with it.
Know.
No, honestly, I know.
Shane, I honestly thought you were going to have him higher than you did.
I like him as receiver 1, but I also don't think this is the best receiver class in the world. So I still had him at I think I had him at 13. So it's still pretty good. But yeah, he's a fun one for sure. We didn't talk about this player yet, but Shamar Stewart lands at 27, right above his teammate Nick Scordon at 28 here. So I did want to talk about him a little bit. On our boards, I know I had him kind of closer to like the mid 20s. Dalton, I think you had him near the end of your board.
Yeah, I have Scordon far ahead of him actually.
Right. And then Jake, I forget where exactly you had him on your.
I had him at 16.
Right, so you were definitely high on him. I was kind of in the middle, and then Dalton was lower. So
I had him 47. He's my edge 7.
Right, and again, all those opinions probably valid about a player like this because boy oh boy is he a projection. Yeah. I ended up moving him down a little bit on further watch just because again. I like the intrigue of what he could be is worthy of being in my top 25 to me, but he ain't a good football player right now. It's plain and simple. I think the run defense is certainly there just because of how big and powerful he is, but as a rusher, he's going to have to be rebuilt from pretty much the ground up at the NFL level, which you don't love to see, but I at least think he has the traits required for that to work potentially. But it's a tough projection to make, admittedly. So.
Yeah, like the lack of production is just terrifying.
It is certainly rough.
Yeah.
So
I missed the edge show, but I think for him when I was watching him, one of the things that worries me is like as a floor for him, I'm worried he might be like Arden Key, kind of a little bit bigger, but like where
more of a run focused guy. Yeah, like a run.
Yeah, it just takes years before he learns how to actually like turn his natural ability into sacks.
Right, which totally fair. But so real quick, I did want to mention some guys down the board here that basically made it either because only one or two of us had him ranked at all, and I think it's very funny. The first one of note with that, actually, I want to bring up is Maxwell Hairston, Dalton. I don't think he was on either my board or Jake's, but you had him you had him just high enough on yours to sneak him in at the end here, which I thought was very funny. So you didn't get a chance to talk about him much. Tell us why you have him in your top 50, because I couldn't quite get there with him.
So he is my corner 3, I believe.
I remember that.
That's kind of why. Like I had him at he was 35 on my board and Amos was 36. So like I had him and Amos as both like late or early second guys.
Mm-hmm.
I think I just think they are guys that can be really good corners in the league, and Hairston especially. The tape's just fun, and his hips are like good. His transition and coverage is so smooth, and I really like him as I think he's one of the easier corners to project.
Fair enough. So I just know you didn't get a chance to talk about him. So he'll be somewhere in my top 75 if I had to guess. Just off athleticism alone. I do think the way in which he played coverage at Kentucky, because I heard some people talking about this. I forget what I was watching, but he played kind of like he didn't play true zone coverage, even though he was playing off a lot of the time. It was more of like an off man type of thing. He was kind of playing man coverage, but from an off alignment. And I think that may be something that at the next level he has to kind of figure out more about how to play the true zone coverage at the next level. And that makes me worried a little bit about his like immediate transition, because ultimately with the athleticism, he's going to be able to play man coverage if you ask him to. Like he's just going to be able to run with guys and do all that stuff. But I'm wondering if it takes him a little bit of time to figure it out at the next level.
So I think I feel like his feel for zone is solid. It's just the zone that they played, it was a lot of palms.
Yeah.
Which is what's weird. So I think
it's
palms
just
weird on tape.
It does.
Like it just does.
But it is a weird thing where it's like we'll see what happens with him. But glad he got on here because you got him high. So you also got Wyatt Milam on there all by yourself, which I do like him. He just didn't quite make my top 50. I think he's going to be a really good guard prospect for sure. I think he'll be a really solid player.
See, I think he might be a tackle still.
I'm not there with him on that, but like either way, like however you view him, I think he's going to be a good offensive lineman at the next level. I got Darius Alexander on here all by myself because I had him, I think, at 36. I still like this dude, man. Like, I know he's an older prospect. It's a deep defensive line class. There's a bunch of guys you could have ahead of him that I would understand. The way he plays, man, there's something about the fire that he plays with as a defensive lineman that kind of gets me going for that type of play style. So I'm excited to see what he ends up doing. But I do think he's going to go closer to, like, this range of 50 than he is where I had him at, admittedly. So that's probably a better indication of where he'll go.
I like the idea of him. I wanted to be higher on him. My big knock on him really was just, if you're playing in the MAC, I expect you to be the best player on the field at all times.
Which, again,
wasn't
totally fair. That's the thing with him. The consistency needs to kind of be upped, which is tough when you're going to the next level, obviously, right? But also someone I wanted to mention, because I know you're not high on him, Dalton, and I would be much higher on him on my board if I wasn't worried about the patellar. Josh Simmons, tackle out of Ohio State. If you could tell me he was fully healthy, right? Like if you told me the knee's good, he'll be able to play as a rookie, he won't have any long-term complications from anything, he'd probably be offensive tackle 2 for me. I do think that's where he'd be, just behind Membu. He wouldn't be ahead of Campbell as an offensive lineman overall, but he would probably be the second pure tackle that I had on my board. So what did you kind of think of him for both of you? Because that's where I would be at with him if he wasn't hurt.
Yeah. You can go first, Jake, because I think you're probably closer to Shayne than I am.
Yeah, where was he? Oh, he's 40. That's pretty much exactly where.
Yeah, and I had him in the
I have him at 37,
20s. Yeah, so. like late 20s because of the injury. So that's why he gets on the board still. Yeah.
Yeah, the injury is just hard for me. That's why I had him a little lower. I don't know. I don't know what it is about linemen, but when linemen have an injury, it's like much bigger deal to me, especially something like a knee than
Yeah, it's just really
positions.
obviously like about as important as like obviously everybody's knee is important in football, but like especially a tackle's knee, bigger body too, trying
Yeah,
to deal with that. So
it
I
just
get
makes
it.
me a lot more nervous.
Yeah, I get that.
That's fair. Yeah, I mean, he wasn't on my board. He'd probably been in my top 75 because I have a late 2 grade on him, late second. But for me, didn't like the lack of nastiness on tape.
It's fair.
Yeah,
And I project him as like a pure left tackle
Yeah,
and the thing with that is too, like, there's some length issues that concern me a little bit for a guy that I think if you project as a pure left tackle, like he doesn't, his build isn't quite as prototypical as like an Ursary, for example.
I wanted to check this because I was curious about the length for some of these guys because it's
Yeah,
been all over the map this year because fucking everyone has different measurements because no
yeah,
matter
I
where
know.
you send them, it's a weird thing.
I
But I
looked
wanted to
earlier, so it
see,
might have
yeah,
changed. Yeah,
yeah, but I wanted to see because going off of pro day numbers, which apparently people are saying they think is more accurate this year. I wanted to see if I
his length check
have,
out.
yeah, I wanted to see what they had his length at, because
It just didn't. He didn't play with it on tape.
no, yeah, and that's fine. Like that matters obviously more, but I was curious, just like the numbers on that, because if
Yeah.
you look at, let's do Ursary here real quick, because I know that he got measured, I think, as well again at. So he had 33 and a half inch arm length. It looks like just under 33 and a half, and then Simmons had. Where's Ohio State? Did I miss him? Yep, here we go. Ohio State had him at 34.
Okay, so a
So
little longer arms.
yeah, so yeah, it's again, but obviously issues on tape are issues on tape with you have them. So
Yeah.
like that's I
Play
wanted to
length.
check that.
Yeah. But and then I think the biggest thing for me was that, I watched a lot of Big Ten football, watched a lot of Ohio State.
Mhm.
One of the things that I noticed and watching like a lot of Ohio State tape for the draft show, I feel like after he went down, Ohio State's offensive line got better.
I remember you talked about that. Yeah, with Donovan Jackson
I-
moving out too.
When
tackle.
Jackson moved out there, I just felt like the offensive line as a whole looked a lot better. I think they ran the ball a lot better. At that point, I think that's kind of when they became a lot more of a dominant team towards the second half of the year. And, that could just be the team getting more comfortable in Chip Kelly's offense.
Right.
There's a lot of factors that can come into play there. But it's just something that I noticed.
For sure. Yeah. So he's a guy. I tend to agree with the issues with like I don't think he's ever going to be a great run defender. Run blocker, but I think as a pure pass protector, I think he's probably outside of maybe, especially from a technique standpoint, like an athleticism standpoint, Membu for me. I trust him on an island more than just about anybody else as a pass protector.
Sure.
And if I'm taking a tackle in the top, especially like 20 picks or so, like I want that to be the primary reason I take him, unless I already have that player that, I already have someone that can protect the quarterback at a high level. Then I might shift to more of like the more mean streak type of players, like an Ursary or someone like that. So that's kind of why I ended up with where I have him there. Without the injury, he'd probably be a top 15 player for me, honestly. But we won't know that, unfortunately, for a while, probably with him. But unless there's any other guys you guys wanted to shout out here on the consensus board, we can jump into our predictive mock here.
On just the board overall, a couple interesting tidbits.
Okay. Oh yeah, you had some. Yeah, give us it.
So here's something interesting. Out of our top 50, 35 guys come from the Power 2.
Oh wow.
That's
35,
crazy.
which is pretty wild.
I did kind of get like a hunch when I was making mine. I was like, man, there's not a lot of like small school guys in here.
Not in this class.
And out of that 35, there were, if you took like the 3 big programs from both the Big Ten and SEC, so I'm saying Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State, and Texas, Georgia, Alabama.
Yep.
Those 6 schools. How many guys do you think are in our top 50 from those 6 schools?
25.
Close.
I would have said about 23, 24.
22.
22.
It's a little lower than that, but yeah, almost half of our big board comes from 6 schools.
That's new. That's a new wave of college football, man. All the best players play for the best teams.
That's NIL, yeah, and it just really makes me wonder, like, if that's going to be a trend going forward.
I think to a certain degree, yeah. I think you'll get the surprise guys who maybe didn't make the move up to a bigger school by the time that they showed enough to be, a draft prospect, so, or guys like Mike Green who had to go to Marshall for reasons, that type of thing as well, but for reasons. So yeah, that's definitely an interesting tidbit for sure. Yeah, but it's a lot of fun. But let me get a mock draft up here so we can take care of that, because this will be the last thing and main thing we do before the draft kicks off on Thursday. We'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of the show in terms of, again, what we're doing. And we're going to be using PFF, but luckily, guys, as you know, we're taking all the picks, so it don't matter what they want to do. They can't give running backs to every team in the first round. They're not allowed to do it. We can decide
Dylan Gabriel's not allowed to get drafted.
He's not allowed to get drafted. Not in the first round. Pick 33. Maybe. No, I'm just kidding. Let's get that up here. So we will be doing this collectively. We'll talk about each pick. We might have differing opinions, but we'll kind of try to go off of, like, if 2 people obviously agree and 1 doesn't, that type of thing. But let me throw the mock draft up here. All right. So we will start the draft here. Now, I'm pretty confident we have an agreement on this pick, right, of Cam Ward add to the Titans. We're confident that's going to be the first pick of the draft. So I think I can just throw that one in here. We don't have to spend too much time with that one. Okay, boom. Okay, now I can see this already being where we might have some disagreements depending on how you view things as they stand. For me, I'm pretty much confident 100% this is Travis Hunter too.
Yeah. I'm in the same boat.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. That's what all the signs are pointing to. Pretty confident about that one too. With the Giants, for me with the Giants, to me this is very clearly Abdul Carter. I don't think they're considering Shedeur Sanders whatsoever. But if you guys want to make an argument for that, I will listen to it. But for me, I'm 100% Carter all the way. I don't think anything else happens here.
I would probably have to be in the same boat. I've seen in the last 2 weeks, I've seen a lot of reports about the Giants decision makers. They say being split on Sanders. And I've seen a lot about him. They want to take a QB with their second pick. And I've seen, and that could all be a smokescreen, but I would have to agree. I think we'll talk about trades later, but for now,
there's some trades I want to talk about.
For now, I would probably go Abdul Carter.
I mean, I want to believe that there's enough people in that organization that are we have to take Shedeur Sanders here. What are we talking about? But no, with it being the Giants, I don't think they're going to take Shedeur.
There's a couple reasons I think that this is the case that we can talk about for a second. The one that I think that is 100% headcanon-y for me, it's 100% I'm just feeling this out. I think Mara isn't going to let this group take a quarterback high until they prove that they can win with a better roster and prove they can draft well. And taking the best player in the draft for them at this point, which would be Abdul Carter, helps them do that. And I think Mara wants them to, again, prove, hey, can you have another great draft like you did last year? Because the draft last year for Shayne was good. It's a really good draft for them. Can he do it again, build upon this roster, actually take them a little bit closer to contention? Then they will allow them to take a big swing on a quarterback if they have the opportunity to, or they'll let them take one a little bit later in the draft, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think the ownership wants to allow this group who's already on the hot seat to take a quarterback this high if they might be gone next year if it doesn't work out. That's kind of my thought process with it.
Yeah, you've also got Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston in there.
Which, if you have those two, you got to play them, right? You got to play them.
If I'm New York, though, I feel like I feel decently confident, and you're not going to the Super Bowl or anything, but I feel like they feel.
You being attacked, Dalton? Are you under siege? Are you good?
Was that a cat?
I just accidentally knocked over my desk skee ball.
Okay.
Desk skee ball. That's sick. Anyway.
Yeah, nice little flex there.
Damn.
It's not big. It's just this teeny tiny little plastic fidget.
That's pretty cool though. No, but go ahead, Jake.
Yeah, I was just saying. I think they feel pretty confident in Russell Wilson starting if they have to.
Yeah.
And it's also kind of speaking to the regime, like you said. I think they kind of need to not win 3 games or 2 games again.
Yeah, and like no matter how you feel about Shadur Sanders, if he starts for this Giants team, if he's the pick at 3 and not someone who can,
It could be bad.
more likely help them win games, they might not win enough to keep that group intact for next year.
Yeah.
So that's just ultimately what it comes down to for me. But number 4 for the Patriots, I think it's going to be Will Campbell. That's where I'm at. I'm open to other suggestions for sure, but I do think that's where it's trending is Will Campbell's going to be the pick.
I think it is Will Campbell. Now, I know apparently allegedly it was Carter is their guy.
Yes.
Allegedly, which makes me wonder if a trade is in play here.
Maybe. The Giants might, but I feel like if you're the Giants, if you're not taking Sanders, why would you just let Carter go if you're going to try to take the best player? To me, that's kind of what I think. That's just my thought on that as far as a trade.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just wondering. I'm just wondering if the Patriots would trade back from here if Carter's off the board. That's kind of my wonder.
Maybe. Now, my question is, who comes up? Do you think if that's the case? That would be my only thing. Is like, do we think a team comes up for anyone? Like in general, I don't think anyone's coming up for any of these players. Most likely,
the only thing I could maybe think of is maybe the Raiders are worried about Genty, maybe. But I don't. Even that feels kind of far fetched.
Trading up to 4 for running.
Oh, I know. That's how the Raiders do it. That's how the Raiders get you guys going.
Look, I don't agree with anything the Raiders do. So I.
I'm speaking on their behalf.
I would lose my mind.
Yeah. No, but I think if they stick and pick here, I do think it would be Will Campbell. Yeah. If they were trading,
a realistic team that I think could move up to either 4 or 5. The Saints. I think the Saints are the top candidate for Shador, given what we've learned about Derek Carr's injury.
So that's the thing, Dalton, is unless they're putting up a really big smokescreen, they apparently don't care for him whatsoever.
Really?
The reports are that they wouldn't even take him at 40 if he made it to 40.
That's kind
of crazy. I don't believe that. That's
definitely a smokescreen. That makes me think they're really high on him.
Right, that's the thing. It's like if you believe that, then I would listen to him at 9. Even I don't even think they'll take him at 9 personally. On like just how I feel about where they're at with it. But I would listen to him at 9. I don't think I would listen to a trade at 4. I don't know if I'm down with that.
Yeah, and I don't know if there's a team in front of them that I would feel like would want to draft.
I mean, I think he's on the table for both the Raiders and the Jets.
The Raiders, yeah, I could see the Jets actually. Yeah, the Raiders. I need to look at Geno Smith's contract closer.
I mean,
but he is for 3 years feels like a long time to sit. Shador.
Yeah, but I mean, I think even after year 2, like I think year 3,
they could probably get out of it.
I would assume so. I haven't really looked at it. Like I don't know the contract exactly off the top of my head.
Gotcha.
But.
And they can also eat dead money on the 3rd year if they need to, because they won't be paying a quarterback because they have a quarterback on a rookie deal.
That's fair.
Good point.
I already know who my projection is for both the Jets and the Raiders, so that's going to be a fun conversation. But Will Campbell is where I think if we're not going to make a trade here, I think that's where
I agree.
Yeah, I'm good with Will Campbell here.
Yeah. So Jags for me, it's very chalk, but I still think Mason Graham makes the most sense for what we've heard and what we've seen with them. But I would be willing to listen to several players, honestly, because it's the Jags. We're not really sure how Gladstone's going to attack this draft. It's his first draft with the Jags. So as much as I'm not high enough on him to take him here, obviously it's a predictive mock, I probably would still lean Graham by a little bit, but there's other players I would listen to here for you guys if you think so.
I think trade back makes a lot of sense for them as well.
Mm-hmm.
Just because, like, I don't know, nothing seems like a great fit for them here, and that makes me wonder if they would just be interested in moving back. as far as potential trade partners go.
Do you think maybe like the Bears, maybe?
I was about to say the Bears jump up to get ahead of the Raiders for Genty.
That is something that actually a friend of mine who never really does mock drafts decided he wanted to do one, and that was a trade he made, and I was like, that's kind of diabolical. If you think the Raiders are set on taking Genty and the Bears jump him, that'd be hilarious and kind of awesome. Because the Bears, remember, do have pick 39 and 41 in this draft.
They have a ton of capital.
Yeah, so that's especially those picks. Like, that could be very valuable to a Jags team here. That might you might not have to necessarily give up quite that much to go up there, but it is an option.
Yeah, I mean,
so I like
Jimmy
the idea of
Johnson
that.
chart is gonna say, hey, you gotta give up probably 39.
Probably, but in a draft like this, I think you factor that in. Maybe like Bears don't want to do that, but they probably would have to realistically if they want to get it done. So that would be certainly interesting if we wanted to do that, because I think that does make logical sense. That if the Bears are dead set on adding Genty, they would want to, just in case the Raiders do take him or want to take him, they would want to maybe jump them for sure. So if we did that, let's just kind of take a look at what that would be like here. So if we did the Bears, if we gave them 10 for 5, we gave up, let's do 41, I think maybe. Be a little bit more in line with, like, especially this class. I think this by itself probably gets it done. Maybe if you give up like 39 and they give back like the Seattle later pick or something, that also works for me too.
Yeah.
Like something like that. So it really doesn't matter for the term, like for the purposes of this mock anyway, like what the trade is. But if you guys want to make that trade, I'm down for it.
I'm down. I think it does make sense.
Yeah. Forcing it. Boom. All right, and we're drafting in that case. Ashton Genty.
I'd be so mad if this
inside the top 5. We love it. Boom. Raiders on the clock. For me, and I know Dalton's not going to like this as much as Jake will like this, I kind of think it would be Armand Membu out of Missouri. That's where I'm at with it.
I think they're pretty set with that offensive line.
I know, but I forget. I know I saw a couple places recently where that's like, even if Genty's there, I've heard some talk about Membu recently.
Well, there's some talk about Colton Miller.
There's that too, but I mean,
and
he's left tackle though, so like I don't know if Membu really would be a left tackle convert, but
if Will Campbell were on the board here, I could see that being the pick
for sure.
But given this board, I would think that Will Johnson would be the pick just because of the scheme fit makes so much sense with Patrick Graham.
Right. So in this situation, though, again, we are the Will Johnson podcast. So let's remember.
I know that, but also like just generally, it feels like a really good fit.
Oh, it does.
It does, yeah.
It's just, is all the smoke about him going into the teens real, or is this not the case? That's what we have to decide if we're predicting it, because. Yeah, like I do, unfortunately, because there's a lot of, like, from the NFL side of things, red flag material with him. The injury, the lack of 40-yard dash at the position, all that stuff is something that I could see easily. We've seen team guys fall for dumber reasons than this. Let's be honest about it. That's my number one concern with taking Johnson as high as we want him to go, is does the NFL shy away from him for a while because of the things that are on his profile? That's my only concern with taking the Raiders, because as a fit, it's a need. It's the best player on the board. All of it makes total sense from our perspective, but does it for the NFL's perspective? That's ultimately what we're doing with this one. So, again, I'm not saying I won't make the pick. I'm just saying I wonder if the NFL is on board with it or not, including the Raiders.
Do any of you see maybe like a Tet here?
I wonder if he goes inside the top 10. I think I hate to do this to you guys, I wouldn't be surprised if Graham was the pick here if he's still on the board in a situation. Because I know they have Wilkins, but
they also gave Adam Butler an extension.
Yeah.
How much was that money wise though? Because I don't remember it was too substantial.
He was rewarded for what he's done for sure.
Okay.
But it wasn't anything super crazy. But like it was a pretty like high price. Like he was one of the first guys they re-signed.
What is it, Jake? Sorry.
I just lost it. 3 years, $16.5 million.
Well, it's pretty good contract. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe they don't look that direction. Do
Now,
they consider
Tyree
moving
Wilson-
down?
I know Tyree Wilson's on the trade block allegedly.
Oh, okay.
Um,
But do they consider moving down? You guys think if
yeah,
maybe let's say their heart was set on Genty, do they maybe call around and see if someone wants to come up? I don't know if we would really be able to find a good candidate. There's one that's staring me in the face. If they like this player a lot, which they might, the NFL seems to, and everyone seems to, except for like us, and like a couple other places. Would a Niners team come up for Mason Graham here if they love him as much as the NFL seems to love him? Because that interior
that would
defensive
make
line
lot
is a
of sense.
mess.
He fits the bill for.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I don't want to get too trade happy because outside of these like outside of the top 10 picks, I don't have many trade likelihoods past this area of the draft. There's one later in the draft I definitely want to explore, but
Yeah.
this could make some sense if the board falls this way.
I think it makes sense right now where if there's not guys at really niche positions that you like, the value is further down the further down the board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like in this situation, what would it look like? Because if we did the Niners and the Raiders here, it'd be 11 for 6, and
then,
maybe like, what's up?
And then maybe
Would it maybe be like a pick from 43 and like 108?
Swap 108, yeah.
That would probably be about right if I had to guess. Again, this doesn't matter too much because all these picks that are getting moved outside of the first round picks aren't going to be mocked in this draft. So we don't have to worry too much about it. But something like that would make some sense because then Raiders have 2 really premium second round picks then. They still have a pick at 68. They have 11.
150 thrown as a sweetener or something like that, or 160.
Maybe something like that. Yeah, but again, either way, like if you guys think this would be how the Raiders would attack this potentially,
I definitely could see that. Yeah,
I could see it.
This would be in a situation, obviously, that Genty was kind of their focus, and he goes, and then they don't love the other players here enough to take him at 6. Not with the Niners calling them, being like, "Hey, what do you want for Mason Graham?" Essentially, here. So let's do that.
Getting 43 would be really nice.
Yeah, even especially only have to give up like 108 to do an N6, obviously, but only move down 5 slots. So let's go. In that case, we're going to do Mason Graham. The Jets, again, for me, if Membu's on the board, I think they slam the pick in 100%. Their right tackle position is an absolute barren wasteland. Olu Fashanu, they want to be the left tackle. I think they would view Membu, and I've heard this from people, that he would be a great fit as the right tackle opposite of him. They don't have to worry about tackle position for whoever the quarterback's going to be long term. I think if Membu was gone, it'd be Warren, but that's the only other name I'd probably entertain here.
I don't know. Wouldn't it be very on brand for the Jets to put this situation in place? It looks like Fields finally has a chance to prove himself as a franchise quarterback, and then draft Shedeur Sanders and create a controversy.
It would be funny, and I appreciate Dalton trying to do it. I'm not talking about Shedeur Sanders until 9. I'm just not. Personally, from everything I've seen, everything the NFL is telling us, I don't think they like him as much as either of you do, especially. I really don't. That's just what it comes down to for me.
I just don't buy it. I don't buy this idea that he's not a top 10 pick. Like, I just don't. There's just no way the hype was as high as it was 2 months ago, and for him to drop that far.
I don't know. Sometimes you get that where, like, it's Deion's son. The numbers are fantastic at Colorado, but then you see all these analysts talking about valid things that are a little bit concerning in terms of, like, the offense he played in was about as like college-y as it gets. Some of the under pressure stuff, some of the lack of like athletic gifts. It gets real easy to for the NFL to push him down the board if they don't love the traits on a quarterback. It's real easy for it to happen. That's what I'm worried about with him.
I'm a huge Shedeur Sanders fan, but I think things like, and it's not really his fault because he was behind probably like a bottom 5 offensive line in the country.
For sure,
but,
it impacted everything.
It kind of, his pocket presence is going to need some work, and I'm not worried about the velocity a ton, but I don't think he necessarily anticipates things well enough, and I think those 2 things can be thing. I would take him in the top 10,
Right.
but I probably would go Membu here also, I think.
And again, like they could
Especially with
surprise us
Fields.
and like completely 180 it after it being so high and then back so low. But
Yeah.
it just feels like, to me, like everything that I hear people talk about with him, and you can talk about draft analysts, you can talk about people who have inside information on stuff. It feels like the NFL realizes that, yes, this is Deion's son. It's a premium like name to add to the league. We don't love the traits enough to make him a high pick. That's what I think it's going to come down to, especially at a spot that so many guys go high because of their traits. Like that's what I worry about with him. So now at 9, we can definitely start having that conversation, because not only does it make sense, Saints might not have any quarterback unless you still believe in Spencer Rattler, which, not gonna lie, kind of rattled my confidence in him last year. Not to be too punny there, but I think for the Jets, I would be focused on Membu or Warren. I think is where I'd be looking. So that's kind of depending on where you guys are at with them.
Yeah. Warren's interesting. I don't know.
Yeah. I think they would view him as the
they
best
go
offensive
tackle
playmaker.
2 years in a row in the first round.
Fair. I do think with Aaron Glenn, though, there, like, if he's not taking a defender, what does he know from being with the Lions? It's that offensive line and what it did for that team, allowed them to do. It allowed them to take a running back at 12 and not only make it smart, but look like a home run pick. It allowed them to do so many things.
And that's another thought, too. Like, with Glenn, like, if they go defense, could we see Michael Williams here?
I've heard that, and boy, oh boy, a lot of people that are Jets fans, and a lot of there's one in particular that I know that's pretty high profile Jets fan who also does a draft podcast, would be just inconsolable if that was the pick. And I think it's very funny. It's Connor Rogers, if you guys don't know who I'm talking about, of the Stock Exchange podcast, shout out. But he mentioned it on there. They did a 7-round mock draft for charity, which is so funny. It's a great watch if you guys have something to listen to for like 6 hours. And what he was talking about at one point is like, if the Jets take Michael Williams, I'm quitting. I'm ending my career. And I'm like, that's so funny. So anyway,
that's a classic. If the draft was in New York, that's a classic. Like,
oh my god,
they blew the stage pick.
Yeah, like, get him out of here. How many sacks did he have? Oh my god, be so funny. Yeah. Anyway, I could unfortunately, for at least my perspective, see that. Jake, did you kind of feel like Membu too, or
yeah?
Where'd you rather?
I would probably go Membu here. I think.
If you guys are good with Membu,
So for me, it's Warren or him. Honestly, I'm kind of fine with either one. I think it just depends on whether they focus on the playmaker or the tackle. Yeah. But I wouldn't be surprised if it was one of those two, basically. But yeah, if you're kind of more so on Membu, we'll do that. Now, this is one, Dalton. I know you're not even as high as the NFL seems to be on this player. I think this is the Jalen Walker spot. We keep hearing him as a top 10 prospect for a lot of people. I think if he goes in the top 10, it's at 8 to the Panthers.
Yeah, I could. Yeah, they kind of have to go defense here. As much as Tet is interesting here.
Yes, he would be. Yeah.
I think Walker makes just too much sense. But again, I think Williams still being on the board is interesting. Yes. But Walker's more of a pure edge than Williams.
Mm-hmm. And for me, this is more so. Everyone on planet Earth is telling us that Jalen Walker is a top 10 pick. Where the hell is he going if it's not here in the top 10? Yeah. I don't think the Saints do it.
I could see him here.
So I don't think the Saints do it. Now the Jaguars are there at 10. They're probably not doing it. They already have a guy that took 3 years to learn how to play edge. I don't think they want to restart that clock in case that happens again. So to me, I think it makes too much sense. If it is true that he's going to go this high, this is where you'd have to take him, I think, to kind of slot him in where they think he's going to go. So, any any opposition to that in terms of actually predicting it? I don't know. Also, funny, 16.8 ADP for both of these players somehow. All right, PFF. Whatever you say. This is where the Shadur conversation gets real for me.
Yeah.
Because the Saints very easily could be kind of trying to smoke screen this real hard, especially with the car injury, making it make even more sense than it would have beforehand. I still think he makes it past them at 9, personally. That's just my personal thought, but I have no problem with you guys thinking that, screw it, they're bullshitting us, we're taking Sanders at 9, because I would believe it.
What do you do at QB if not a quarterback? Like, do you think
that's the problem?
That's the problem. And you.
But it's the Saints, though. That's the issue. That's why
I guess you could get like a second or third round, but I
hear they like Jackson Dart, which is so funny, by the way.
Yeah,
incredibly funny.
Jackson Dart.
Just add. How funny of a QB room is Spencer Rattler? Is it Jake Haener?
Yeah.
Right, Jake Haener and Jackson Dart.
Yeah, it's a bright room, you know. It's a really, really blinding room.
And like stereotypical.
Yes.
Like QB, like just day
exactly.
2, like just let's just fill.
How many day 2 quarterbacks can we? Yeah, how many day 2 quarterbacks can we have, including our starter, who was a day 2 quarterback before? You know, now he's hurt, but whatever. But I believe it if Sanders
coached by a day 2 quarterback.
Correct. Yes. Let's do it. We love it. Wait, Moore was a day 3 quarterback.
He actually makes more sense.
Wasn't he? Was he undrafted? Yeah. I think Kellen Moore wasn't drafted.
I mean, technically, I think Haener and Rattler were day 3 guys too.
Oh yeah, Haener, was he a 4th round pick? We're thinking about this too much. Point is, they're all mid. This is what we're trying to get across here.
If we don't go quarterback here, I know I just mentioned his name a lot, but how much of a perfect replacement for Cameron Jordan is Michael Williams?
I mean, if you think he's good, then yeah.
But like the build is like.
No, I know. Yeah, it's very similar. Yeah. But here's the thing: do they care anymore now that they're free of all the previous remnants of this organization, except for the GM, who seems to kind of base his picks off of more so immediate need to make the team as good as possible, and also based on, for a while, Dennis Allen's need to have 280-pound edge rushers 4 deep for some reason. Zero juice, absolutely zero get off, all power, all meat claws for hands. Like that's all he cared about. So now they're free of that. They could go in a different direction defensively. But if they do go someone other than Sanders, I kind of like Jahdae Barron here, honestly, or Tyler Warren, because
Warren is interesting.
Yeah, Warren would be fun for sure, just because it's Tyler Warren.
There.
Yeah.
He's by far the best player on the board here. If
for
you
me,
think they're going to go true BPA,
it would be Warren.
The guy.
Yeah. Now again, I will defer to you guys if you do believe that the smokescreen is real and Sanders is going to go here, because it makes total sense to me from a logical standpoint. I just am being told everything but that. So, plus it makes me not have to think about it 12 picks from now. So there's that too. Anyway,
this is a hard decision.
Yeah, because here's the part that throws me off. So apparently, allegedly, the Saints have known Carr needed surgery since like 2023.
Which is hilarious, by the way. The stupidest shit I've ever heard in my entire life.
So if that's the case, they might actually be like looking at him possibly long term.
Do we think that's 100% true?
I don't know, but I wonder.
Doesn't it sound like a Saints thing, though?
Do we think Derek Carr might not want to play in New Orleans?
But also, I think if the Saints know that, that means they were just going to see what he could do until they knew they had to rebuild. And now that they're rebuilding, he's just going to take the year off, get surgery, and they're just going to take the best player available, and then come back with Carr next year.
It's totally possible, and that's the question, right? Like,
wild, but
it's wild. But like if that ain't a Saints fucking thing to do.
That would be a Saints.
Is there anything more Saints than that you've ever heard in your whole life?
And just show up next year with like Derek Carr and Tyler Warren running the show, and Carr throwing to Warren 130 times next year.
Yes. Great for Tyler Warren's paycheck,
honestly,
future paycheck.
The more we talk about it, the more I kind of do like Warren here.
Yeah. That's the pick, I think, actually.
I
would be down for that.
Again, I'm more in line with that type of pick. So
it's Taysom Hill on it's Taysom
Mega roids, bro.
It's
Have him throw the ball.
Monstars Taysom Hill.
Yeah, I like that. Jags on the clock here now. They probably would have loved Tyler Warren to be here, but they did not. They did not get him. So for me, I think because of this trade, the way that it played out, I think you could argue because Cohen is coming in here, they're trying to focus on making this offense as good as possible for Trevor Lawrence. Obviously we love Brian Thomas Jr. Awesome rookie season. Diami Brown, I'm a fan of a little bit, more so than probably the average person is, but he is a limited player. Tet and Brian Thomas Jr. would be fun.
Yeah.
And I think if he's here, in this situation where they move down, they would consider it.
Yeah.
At least.
Counterpoint.
Mm-hmm.
You're an offensive-minded head coach. You think you can you don't need to spend draft capital on offense, especially with Trevor Lawrence and Brian Thomas Jr. there. Defense, Starks is staring us right in the face. They have a need in the secondary.
Will Johnson could start to come into play.
Will Johnson as well.
Malachi Starks could be fun.
They've spent a decent amount of assets at corner, though, haven't they?
I think it was primarily just a slot with Jordan Lewis, though, I thought. Like in free agency, at least. They have some other corners, but Jerrion Jones played pretty well last year, but he played in the slot where he played well, whereas outside corner, he was pretty awful at Florida State. So I don't know if he's just going to be
Tyson Campbell's their other outside corner.
Good player when he's healthy, but he missed some time, I think.
Yeah, so then Johnson would make sense. I could see that.
Yeah, Johnson would definitely make sense.
Yeah,
Do we think it would be a little early for me with him and early for what I think the league might think, but do we start hearing Colson Loveland's name come up?
That thought crossed my mind.
Because right now Brenton Strange is your starting tight end.
Yeah. But again, if you were picking Colson Loveland, I think you'd
probably
just take Tyler Warren at 5.
That's true. Yeah. That too. Or probably take Ted at 10 instead, probably too. But yeah, I could see that being in contention. Yeah. I kind of like, of the names we've mentioned, I don't think Starks goes this early, even though I think he very well should, but he probably won't. I think I'd be debating between Tet and Will Johnson. So, and I'd probably lean Tet.
I would probably lean Johnson between those two.
Okay.
Dalton, what would you?
But it's very much a toss-up between those two.
Johnson, I think Johnson. But if that's the case, would you just take Johnson at 5?
Yeah, that's good.
Right, but you get all this value. To go down, knowing that teams might not be very high on him, and even you might not be super comfortable taking him top 5. But now you're sitting at 10.
That's a good point. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because if you don't think anyone's taking him before 10, you don't mind moving down 10, and maybe you're good with 3 or 4 other players here, but you also were hoping he'd be here. Like the need makes a lot of sense, like in terms of just the fit for things too. So plus we can say that we're a little higher even than the predictive mocks are. Will Johnson, we can still call ourselves the Will Johnson podcast. Yep. Although I'm pretty sure he goes at 11 if he doesn't go here anyway. But we'll do Will Johnson here. Raiders at 11. What do you guys got in this situation for the Raiders?
I really wouldn't mind Jahdae Barron here. Honestly.
I was about to say Jahdae Barron because to me you just let Nate Hobbs walk in free agency.
And you can play in so many spots in the secondary.
Yeah. Barron feels like a perfect replacement for Nate Hobbs. Mm-hmm. A guy that could be, your outside corner, or you can have him just follow somebody else around in the slot, do whatever you need him to do. Physical. I think he makes a lot of sense. I think if Shador's still on the board here, I think they would have to consider it.
Right.
Yeah.
And also at this point, I think we are getting to the point if he makes out of the top 10 team that could possibly come up for him. Shayne.
Oh no, they're not trading up for him.
You don't think they're trading up? No.
Well, one, they don't have the draft capital to do it. At least not ones that their teams probably want in this draft. And then 2, I don't even know if they'll take him at 21 if he's there. From reports I've heard, from how the meeting went with him, I don't know. If
I
they
just
take
wrote
him
a
at
piece
21.
as like an out on like trade scenarios for the Raiders at 6, and I had the Steelers giving up their 2021 first.
2021.
Or I mean 2026 first. You know what I mean?
Oh, dude, listen. I would probably never speak to anyone affiliated with the team in my whole life again. But no, I don't think they'd be the team to do it. I think that they will consider him if he makes it all the way to 21.
Fair.
But even then, I don't know if he actually is the pick, frankly. From at least just from what I've heard from people.
But yeah,
If the Steelers are going to trade up, I think it has to be in the second round.
Yeah, for someone else, yeah.
But yeah, I think if the board shakes out this way, I mean, because if you were going to take Sanders, you'd have taken him at 6. So I think
that argument falls more, because we had that argument with Johnson at 10, but I think the Sanders one makes more sense, where you would have just taken him and not risked it if it's a quarterback. So I'd probably lean Barron too. I think it makes a lot of sense for their defense. And again, he has a lot of hype too, so I think he's going to go pretty early in this.
That would be fun.
He would be,
offense, but it just feels like a luxury pick.
Kind of, yeah. I think they need to settle in on other spots to see where they're at first before they worry about more playmakers on offense. As good as he might be able to be. Speaking of Tet, I think he's the pick if he's here for the Cowboys.
Yeah. They're like, give me the big wide receiver.
Yeah, give me the big wide receiver. Play with CD. We need more receivers. I know I traded for fucking, where was it from the Panthers? Fucking, I don't even remember his name. Gave up like way too much for him. I don't know.
That's not good that we don't remember.
Yeah, I can't even think of his name right now. Jonathan Mingo. Yeah, good job on that one.
Oh,
they traded they traded for actual like real assets for him. And then he caught like 3 balls for them last year when he got traded over. It was really awesome. Anyway. I think Tet's the pick here. Yeah, we can. Yeah. Now, the Dolphins. Oh boy, the Dolphins.
Should be Banks.
Should be Banks. But will it be? This is the Dolphins we're talking about. Who's the fastest player on the board? No, I'm just kidding. I think that it would make the most sense for them to go offensive line for sure.
Yeah.
But
Mike McDaniel wants Luther Burden so bad.
He probably does, but we're not doing that. I promise you that. Yeah. I will not do that. We have a lot of Miami fans that are a part of our former home here, so we're not going to do that to them. I don't think they can handle the stress of not having anyone protect Tua anymore.
I do think with the Jalen Ramsey trade talks being so big right now, I could see Barron being in play if he was available here, but I think
I think him and Will Johnson both could be in play at 13 if they're there.
But I think they would be forced to go offensive line with this.
I like to think they're forced to.
You have to protect Tua.
You think so, but they don't seem to really give a whole lot of shit about none of that.
But at some point you have to.
At some point, you're right. But when is the point? I don't know. But no, I think it would be Banks here, if I had to guess. I think Simmons would make sense as a pure left tackle protector, but too early for him with the injury stuff.
Also, left-handed quarterback.
True.
I think the guy that plays right tackle possibly is fine.
So I think it would be Banks here for sure. I could see him going this early. Colts. Now, here's the question for you guys. Do they take Jahad Campbell or Colston Loveland? Because I bet you it's one of them if they don't trade down.
Yeah. I mean,
because they want this to be Tyler Warren, but it ain't going to be Tyler Warren.
Yeah.
Or sorry to break their hearts, it ain't going to be him.
I could see Loveland here. I know Chris Bauer is like a trade down warrior though.
I can see him. I think that the linebacker room is a little sus nowadays. John Campbell would be a very fun, like uber athlete pick because we got to remember. Chris Ballard loves himself some RAS scores, my guy. He loves himself some RAS scores. Campbell fits that bill. Not that there isn't other players. And Loveland probably also would have fit that bill pretty well if he had tested, but the injury with the shoulder is probably hurting him there. So to me, I think it would be Loveland or Campbell for them if they stay here at 14. Now, Ballard's going to be working phones, but I don't think anybody's moving up to 14. in this draft. I think.
Yeah, I don't think there's anybody that.
Because if you want Shedeur, right, like you don't have to skip over the Falcons maybe the Falcons. Maybe you do have to skip over the Falcons if you want. No, but no, realistically, you don't have to beat out the Cardinals, the Bengals, the Seahawks. Probably, I don't think so. So they probably don't want to move up to 14 to pick Sanders if someone is doing that. I think they'd probably have to stick and pick. So
I kind of like Loveland here between the two. Maybe just to try to help out Anthony Richardson if he can get the ball there.
Or Daniel Jones if you're Dalton.
Or Daniel Jones.
Rather have
let
Daniel
me
Jones
not be
play.
too confident in Richardson.
I don't know.
But...
I mean, honestly, it'd be a decision.
I know that's the well. It sounds like it's a decision for the Colts too.
Daniel Jones in like a somewhat normal offense might be at least like, especially if you play good enough defense, like you could possibly see that working at least a little bit better than.
Yeah,
he's at least going to complete half his passes.
Yeah, here's the thing about Daniel Jones, right? Is like he's not good, but this team almost made the playoffs with Gardner Minshew at quarterback in 2023. So like, is it that far?
After watching 2024 Gardner Minshew, I am.
Yeah. Is it that far fetched for Daniel Jones?
I'm really surprised that they were able to do that.
That's my point. Is it that far fetched for Daniel Jones to be able to play okay for the Colts? I don't think so, but I also don't want to see it anymore, frankly. So there's that.
That is a real thought, though. Like, is Anthony Richardson a worse quarterback than Gardner Minshew? Is that a real possibility?
I think he's a worse completer of passes than Gardner Minshew is. That's for sure. I don't know about overall player in terms of value, but it's certainly closer than it has any right to be.
I mean, I think
I am
more passes than Anthony
just because of
Richardson.
the fun things he does. I am severely less depressed watching Richardson play.
Well, I mean, for sure, that's not really the question, though, Jake. I mean, if you're going to be depressed anyway if you're watching Gardner Minshew play for the Raiders. Like, it doesn't really matter. Yeah,
not exactly a high bar to clear.
That's fair.
But
yeah, I think I'm good with Loveland here. Like, as much as I'm not as high on him, like he makes sense.
I just feel like you have to.
Yeah,
It'd be hard for Richardson to miss.
This is true. He'll find a way.
He's so big, just physics.
Yeah. Now this is where for Dalton with Michael Williams talk, I think it gets real serious around here.
Yeah.
Now, could they also do the Falcons thing and instead of taking an edge rusher, take like Jahad Campbell or something? I think that's possible.
Be an edge rusher.
Well, they would just take him to be a linebacker and just say edge rushers don't matter because that's what they've been saying for like 5 years. But if we're assuming they're going to be smart about this, which might be tough to ask for Terry Fano, it would make sense for it to be an edge rusher. It would not be Michael Williams for me, but I'm not the one actually making the pick. We're guessing what they're going to do, and I think he is certainly in play for it. At this pick. So. Is there anyone else you guys want to shout out as possibilities here? I can see Walter Nolan as an interior player potentially.
I think it's
kind of
Williams
juice.
Campbell here.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too. Where do you think, Jake?
I'm in the same boat.
Gotcha. So I guess it's really dealer's choice. Like if it's us, even if I'm not a big fan of him, they got to take a fucking edge rusher at some point, right? Worth something maybe. You know, like I'm not high on them, but like if they are.
Or the funny pick, the Falcons pick would be Ibuka here, right?
Oh, dude.
They'd be like, look,
I love the fact that there's
and Drake London and Kyle Pitts will be unstoppable.
I love that there's multiple different positions that we can laugh at and be like, that's a Falcons pick.
Taking Emeka Ibuka would be like that's the one team that could take him and not actually get the value out of him that he should give them, which is so funny to think about. Like, there's very few teams he could go to in the first round where I'd be like, oh, man, he's not going to be awesome. The Falcons would be one of them. Because what the fuck do they need? Whatever. Anyway, I'm probably going Michael Williams here if you guys I think he's going to go pretty early, so you should get him off the board. Cardinals. I could see them going interior here pretty, most likely. Walter Nolan is on the board. So that's certainly an option. Even Kenneth Grant...
That makes sense. The injuries are okay.
That's for sure. Like I actually have him in mind for our next pick because a lot of people who I know in the Bengals world seem pretty convinced that Herman is in play at 17 for them. But his name's certainly in here too. assuming the injuries check out. I do think it's interior defensive line is kind of where they go. I could see them taking, honestly, I could even see them taking a receiver because Michael Wilson might not be enough next to Marvin Harrison Jr., despite Trey McBride getting a fat contract to be technically the number 2 there. So I'd consider that too.
Also, because they need to stop. I mean, part of why they have to go D-line is they just got to get better against the run.
Yes.
What do they have at linebacker?
Right now, not much. So Jihad Campbell would be on the table here, I think, too.
I think
good blitzer for Gannon scheme. Like
he arguably makes them because I mean, they still have Josh Sweat and Calais Campbell and Dalvin Tomlinson. They have guys on the D-line. I think if you wanted to get better against the run overnight, Campbell would probably be the pick.
I'm good with it.
Yeah, I'm good with that too.
I like it. I think he should go pretty early. Now, Bucs fans might be sad because I think that's where they want him to go. But I can see that.
Let me check that again. Defensively, how bad were they against the run last year?
Can't be great. Right? Can't possibly be very good.
No, I don't think so. They were giving up.
It's not that bad.
Oh, really?
Pro Football. Well, I'm looking on Pro Football Reference on rushing yards, and they had the 13th most.
Oh wow! What was their yards per attempt though?
They gave up 4.6.
4.6.
Ooh, that's a rough number.
That is a bad number.
A bad number. Teams must have been throwing on them.
5 yards every run is kind of.
It's not great.
Not good.
Ideal. I'm cool with Campbell. I think that's a fun fit. It's a fun fit. Bengals. I think defensive interior over edge for them. Yeah, Luther Burden. Yep. Man, Joe Burrow's going to be so good half the time when he's not dead.
Yeah,
this
feels like Harmon.
I think so too, but the injury things clouds that for me. But I've heard
it's
too
their
many
profile
things.
so well.
He does.
I like Harmon. Yeah.
It's hurt. It's too. I've heard it too much.
And this will make me sad for the
Yeah.
viewers, but
Me too. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say this would. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. You go.
I was just gonna say taking Harmon here would make me sad for the Steelers, but
Me too.
it makes a lot of sense.
Who was the Penn State guy they had for years?
Devin Still.
I'm trying to think of it. If that's what I'm thinking of, that kind of is
He
there.
was good, but he wasn't great.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the profile though. Maybe more like a Geno Atkins almost.
Well, Atkins was a smaller player than Harmon, but like definitely a pass rush first player. So from that perspective, they need somebody to get after the passer, dude.
Yeah.
I don't really care who it is. You could tell me like, yeah, throw Mike Green here. I don't think they would do that, but because of the things, but maybe they would. I think that Harmon makes a lot of sense.
I'm good with that.
Again, we could be very wrong about this if he's like knees don't work or something, and we're like, oh shit, how are we supposed to know that? But I think that's where I would probably lean here for them. So,
yeah, I'll go with that.
The Seahawks. Now, before we say anything, if any Seahawks fans were to come across this, I hate that I'm about to say what I'm about to say to you, but we know John Schneider ain't taking a fucking interior offensive lineman here. We know his ass ain't taking it. So I know Sam Darnold is going to be destroyed by week 6 if you don't. I don't think John Schneider cares. I don't think he cares that he needs an interior offensive line. He thinks he can get it done on day 2 and 3, which, hey, maybe he can.
In this class, maybe.
Maybe you can. But we're not taking an interior offensive line here, guys.
Well, that takes one of my two guys.
It would be taking too many trend breaking things for me to do in a predictive mock.
Yeah. James Pierce makes a lot of sense.
James Pierce makes sense. Someone I wanted to throw out. Now, this isn't just because he's my wide receiver 1, but it's because I think he would complete their receiver room with the deep speed and the ability to go down the field and be more outside receiver.
Yeah.
Matthew Golden makes a lot of sense. I've heard his name connected to them. Would make the trio of receivers very, very good there.
Yeah, Book is pretty close to what they already have.
That's my thing too.
I would.
So
I wasn't really thinking about Golden, but I actually would like that.
I think it makes a lot of sense. Again, the NFL seems just about as high on him as I am, maybe not quite as high, but I think that someone in this range is going to take him, and for me, it makes the most sense for it to be the Seahawks with what they need at receiver. That would be my pick, but I'm open to other things here too.
Yeah, just because I know they love those edge rush, like they do like the speed to power edge rushers.
Yes.
And I think Pierce brings a lot of that to the table.
Mm-hmm. So Pierce would make a lot of sense as well, for sure.
Yeah, I'm also just not as high on Golden, which is probably part of it.
Right, but yeah, I'm thinking of this from like Golden seems to be likely to go high. If he doesn't go at 12 to the Cowboys because Tet goes there, where does he go early? Seahawks make the most sense to me of that kind of group in that top 20 range, which feels like where he's going to go. So that way Sam Darnold can complete a 50-yard pass and then get sacked the other 3 downs on the play. But
I could see that because they do have another second rounder from Pittsburgh.
They do. So they have more assets to tack other spots later as well. So receiver, I like some of the receivers that are more second-round players, but that's not as deep as edge and like interior offensive line. So
that is a good point.
Yeah. So I'm good with so that's where my head's at, but I'm also like Pierce makes a lot of sense. Something on the defense makes sense, especially edge. But
I'll probably go Golden, I think. But I it would be Golden or Pierce for me.
I'm good with it.
Okay. I'll do. Again, this makes the most sense fit-wise. Bucks, I think they go edge with Campbell gone.
This
question.
I think they'd run the card in for Pierce.
Yeah,
you think so?
That's what I was about to say.
Everything I've heard is they might be a big Ezraku team if he goes in the first round. I like James Pierce a lot. You know how much I like
I don't see Ezraku as the first round guy.
Right.
Just because of the measurables.
Yeah. Right, but I will say, dude can rush the fuck out of the passer.
Yeah. Someone will go after him in the second round. I just don't think the NFL is going to.
First might be early for him, as much as there's been a lot of hype with him. I think he's another example of like the traits are going to probably matter a little bit with him. So and the measurables, but I'm good with James Pierce here.
This is going to be Hampton. I feel.
Yeah, I think it's going to be O'Marion Hampton.
Really?
Yeah.
This is like the only thing I've seen for Denver is O'Marion Hampton recently.
See, I think Sean Payton jumps out of his seat for Ibuka here.
Oh, I would love that, but I
can see
it makes so much sense.
He does. I think
he would watch Ibuka and just say, "This is Michael Thomas."
Okay,
that's a good point.
That's what he would.
I can do it.
Not see that.
Slant Boy returns.
Yeah.
Or Slant Boy 2 Return of Slant Boy.
Return of Slant.
I have no problem with it. I will agree with Jake that like that is the whole like basically everywhere you look is like Hampton's the pick at 20.
I feel like I can't look at any mock without seeing Hampton go.
But that's
20.
also with the idea that Ibuka's not going to be there.
Yeah, and
I think most of the time I see Ibuka go in the 30s in those mocks. Frankly,
really.
So yeah, it's weird. Like Ibuka's range is all over the fucking place.
The fit there just makes too much sense.
Oh, I agree with you.
Yeah,
I'll throw the card. I'll put the card in right now. I just did it. Who cares? The Steelers at 21.
Okay. All right, Shane, give your piece first.
So, again, I will maintain that I think if Sanders gets here, I do not believe he'll be the pick. I don't think any quarterback is going to be the pick. I think if they don't like the players here, other than quarterback, obviously, if they like a quarterback enough, they'll take one here, right? Everything I've heard about how they feel about like Sanders, Dart, Miller, all this stuff, I don't think they're high enough on them to take them at 21. Now, would they trade back if a team wants to come up and get one of those guys and then maybe target one of them a little bit later to try to recoup some picks? I think so. But I don't think they stick and pick a quarterback at 21, if I had to guess.
In this bizarre world that we somehow created where Malachi Starks is still on the board.
Yes. They did show a little bit of interest in him with Georgia's Pro Day. I would not be too shocked, although I don't know at this point. I know how I feel about Minka's contract. But I don't know how they feel.
Or is he more of a corner?
No, he's a safety. He's been a safety for the whole
Gotcha.
time he's been here. Yeah, he's been a true free safety since he was brought over, which Starks could fill that role, and I think Starks could
Yeah.
also be a slot corner for them early.
Yep.
So like the fit is fine, but I'm saying I don't know if they're a team that takes a safety high if they believe that Fitzpatrick
True.
is going to
Especially
be
because
there.
they also have Joey Porter Jr. too.
Yes, at corner. So to me, this is tough because the way the board's fallen, there isn't a lot of guys on the board who fit the criteria to be a first round pick for them. Usually, you have to be a top 30 visit. You have to be one of either a pro day visit or combine visit as well to be in consideration for a first round pick. Not a lot of guys on the board that I think are high enough on theirs to really fit that bill. Like I don't think they have any interest in Walter Nolan. Starks could be an option. They showed no interest in Luther Burden. I don't know really what they do here.
If it's not Starks,
Yeah.
I mean, I would think if. It would kind of have to be Shador, I think.
And I will totally accept
I have
that.
the-
'Cause I get it. Because
I have
Right now,
seen the
right now,
reports
your quarterback is Mason Rudolph.
hey, that's
And they say they're confident in that, but I don't know how confident.
I
they
don't.
are.
Well,
No,
Mike
that's a
Tomlin-
lie.
Mike Tomlin would be
That's a lie.
confident.
Sanders,
Mike
but
Tomlin would
here's
be
the thing.
confident if I was the quarterback for his team.
Here's the thing.
Because it's Mike Tomlin.
And you can
So-
still probably somehow win 9 games.
Yes, absolutely. I would be throwing
Mason
nothing but
Rudolph's
dump
not
offs.
confident with Mason
Shayne.
Rudolph being starting quarterback.
Probably not.
I've seen the reports that people in the organization weren't thrilled with Shador, but I've also seen reports that Mike Tomlin is high on Shador, and I think
Well, guess what? Guess
I think
what?
if
All that
Mike
matters
Tomlin
then.
is high on Shador, then that
Guess what?
is influential.
Yeah, if that's the case, everything else be
I just-
damned. He's
Did
gonna be the
you
quarterback.
watch Aaron Rodgers' interview?
I did. I wish
He
I
did
had.
not sound like a man that wants to play football this year.
He sounds like a
No,
man
he
who
doesn't
needs to
care about
chill on
anything.
whatever recreational drug he's currently using. Is what it sounded
The
like.
first 10 minutes of that interview. Never mind.
Wasting my time.
But-
Wasting my time.
The only way Aaron Rodgers plays football next year is if he thinks that is the way he gets the most attention next year.
Yeah, that's.
If
my
he can
guess.
get more attention by not being on a roster next year,
That's what he's doing right now.
he's gonna do that.
Yep, that's what he's trying out right now. I think.
I don't know. My choice, I think, has to be Sanders here.
Yeah.
I
have no problem. I have no problem.
I just
But
don't
here's
think you can look at.
the other name I want to throw out
Alex
there
Wood.
though, because he fits the bill. I think he's has the requirements that you normally have to have. Shamar Stewart is in play here. I think they would play.
He took a top 30 visit, right?
Yeah, he did,
Okay.
and I think he would be more of a 5 tech for them in that situation.
I
So that's in
That would
play.
intrigue
I
me.
will say that.
that
Now,
would
would they take him over a quarterback if they actually like the quarterback? Probably not. So if we're playing the odds that they like the quarterback, then I think that would be the pick. Plus, we get him off the board here then.
Yeah, we don't have to ask about him every.
I think that if they do like him enough, he'll be the pick if he makes it here. And in our scenario, he did. So I think we can take him here.
Yeah.
Plus, that means I don't have to hear about Aaron Rodgers' ass ever again.
Yeah, I can't wait for that day.
Kenneth Grant.
Yeah, my cat just said
Grant.
yes to Kenneth Grant.
Yeah.
Michigan connection. They need help on the interior defensive line. Omer Hampton.
Play here.
I think they let Najee roll out there next year and
Yeah.
figure it out.
They did sign Najee, yeah. Also, Luther Burden feels like a Harbaugh guy.
Could be fun for sure.
That's the name I was gonna throw out. This is around the time in the first round when I think we start to see Burden.
I think so,
an
too.
ugly, gross offense that would be with Ladd and Luther Burden out there just grinding out receptions.
Oh, an ugly, terrible offense, but a fun one in some ways. When
Yeah,
one of them
Najee
breaks off a
Harris-
60-yarder.
Najee
What
Harris
they
grinding
do.
out 3.4 yards per carry.
Listen here, Jake. He's going to average more yards per carry than he ever has in his whole life this year because it's going to be like 4.2 instead of 3.9.
Yeah, he's gonna end up rushing for 1150 instead of 1040.
Right, exactly.
I
Yeah.
do think if you're going to give Justin Herbert all this money, you have to give him someone other than Ladd to throw to. Ladd
Yeah.
McConkey was literally the only able-bodied human being in that
Yeah,
wide
he was out there
receiver.
throwing balls to Will Dissly and Quentin Johnston and Freaking Jalen Reagor was catching balls for this team. Actually, for real.
2024. Yeah, I like Burden here.
I'm cool with it. I just threw Kenneth Grant's name out first because there's an M here.
Kenneth Grant makes sense because of the Michigan connection. I get it.
Yeah, but I think he could like Luther Burden a lot. So I'm good with it here. Packers, not a receiver.
No, they just won't do it.
I want another number 2 receiver on the
right.
You look at Umanor.
He'll be on a Packers. He'll definitely be in a Packers jersey. I don't know if Walter Nolan reaches the thresholds, but we should probably get him off the board at some point because he's a guy that I could see falling because there's some stuff apparently with him that I've heard about that could push him down off the field. But I think at some point he's got to go, and it makes sense in this range. They need more. Yeah,
it's also interesting here.
Yeah, I do wonder where he's going to go in the draft because we like him a lot here on this podcast. But does the NFL? I think it depends. Honestly, when is this? I think he has a pro day like Wednesday.
Yeah.
Before the draft to like show that he can run. If he does really well there, his freaking draft stock's probably like his over under on like whatever betting set's going to go through the freaking roof. If he runs like a 4.45 or something and like looks good in the drills, he's going to be like 30 picks higher than he is right now projected probably. But he's a fun one. They do need help there. I don't think they need safety help at all, so we're not going to go Starks here. For me, I'd be looking at. I don't want them to go edge because they just need their guys that they've drafted to actually play well. Frankly, is kind of where I'm at with it. But Scorton would fit their mold, I think, for the most part, especially if he plays a little heavier than he tested at. I could see that him, Kenneth Grant, and Walter Nolan are the 3 that I kind of think about here. Because I would rather them go interior, but I could see them going edge.
I kind of like Kenneth Grant here.
I do too. Because why can't I think of his name right now? They're nose tackle, really good player. Kenny, what's his last name? You guys can help me out here, right?
I know exactly who you're talking about.
Why can't I think of his last name?
Clark.
Kenny Clark. Yeah. His cap hit, I think I heard next year is like something ridiculous because the way the contract was structured. So he's either not playing for this team or he's getting a whole new deal. Either way, they probably want to look for the future there. Grant would make a lot of sense if that's the case.
Yeah, that would probably be my pick here.
What do you think, Dalton?
I mean, I'm good with it.
Because I don't know I think it's too early for the other corners unless they're really not worried at all about Morrison's health.
Yeah. I mean, maybe lean more Scorton here, but if you want to go Grant, I'm okay with it.
Scorton would be the other one, right? Where it's
I can see Scorton also.
Because it's just for me, they fired their defensive line coach, which makes me think they like the players, they don't like the scheme, don't like the way it's coached. That's kind of what I take that as personally. So I think maybe they like the guys at edge, they just need them to produce more.
Yeah. And
Grant would fill a pretty big role in those.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Kat says yes. Let's move on. Now, this is another trade spot I am determined to have happen. The Vikings have, and it doesn't show the whole thing, but they have pretty much nothing after this pick for a while. 79, I think, and then nothing else. So,
but if Malachi Starks is still here, do you just take him and call it a day and say we were very good last year. We had Malachi Starks to this team. We're pretty set. And we'll draft a running back somewhere.
That's the question. I would get it. I could even see them entertaining Walter Nolan as well for the interior. I know they signed a bunch of guys, but
if Starks is here, I don't see how they don't run the card, and I don't think Starks should really fall this high. But I mean, the way
they could with the safety group,
yeah.
With the way that safeties are viewed sometimes. Now, the reason I wanted to bring that up is because the Starks thing does throw a wrench into it a little bit, but for me, where this was going to go was the Chiefs were going to call the Vikings and try to get ahead of Houston for the next offensive tackle off the board. That was my thought there, was that the Chiefs want an offensive tackle they can develop as a starter eventually, and they want to get ahead of the Texans, who they are pretty confident are going to take one with how they handled the Tunsil situation, right? So that was my thought process. I think the Vikings are the pivot point in this part of the draft of when you start seeing trades happen, because they so desperately need like more cheap players to me and more guys they can pick in this draft, and they don't have that ability if they pick at 24.
Yeah.
But Starks being here does throw it in the What's up?
I don't know if the Chiefs would move up for offensive line just because I don't know if the difference at this point in the class for the offensive line, if there's enough of a gap to justify trading, unless they love Josh Simmons.
I think Simmons falls here because of the injury, and I think that they take advantage of it. Similar to another Simmons has happened to a couple of years, not that long ago, with the Titans when they brought in the defensive lineman Simmons. I can't remember his first name right now. But Jeffrey Simmons.
Also, the Chiefs signed a tackle.
They did, but is he a real tackle?
True.
I hadn't heard his name before and that's me. So I don't know if I believe he's a real tackle. I still think he might not show up. No, I'm just kidding.
He might not show up.
He might not show up to camp. No,
I gave him a lot of money for him to not show up.
Holding out.
I'm not doing.
I want a new deal.
No one, but like he's a stopgap to me. Obviously, I think that's kind of the goal there. So I think that would help, though. That would make Simmons make even more sense if you think about it, because then he doesn't have to play this year probably.
Yeah.
When he's recovering from the knee, if they like.
But I just think you take whoever's there at 31 at that point, if they're not going to play right away.
Sure. I think it depends on how they view Simmons, but Starks being on the board here does complicate things because he's such a Viking.
Yeah.
I think I'd probably have to, as much as the trade made sense to me.
I'd probably go Starks also.
Yeah, I think I just got
Starks in that secondary.
I do like that idea for a trade, though.
Yes, I do too.
That makes a lot of sense.
I think it could very likely happen in the draft. But with how we did it, take Starks here. Texans. Please take someone on the offensive line. I'm begging you. I don't really care who the fuck it is.
I like
take someone.
Jackson here.
I do too, actually. I think
you can just play him anywhere on that offensive line.
Because I think they need someone who can play right now. So Simmons to me wouldn't be the best fit. The upside there for me is great, but I don't know if you want to take a guy who might not play this year. I could maybe talk myself into Tyler Booker, even though the tackle's a bigger problem. But they seem to think that Titus Howard and Blake Fisher could be the tackles. I don't know about that one, Chief.
Yeah, and if you think that, you can always take Jackson to play guard, and then if he just dominates in camp, then you're like, oh, well, it turns out he's our left tackle.
Right. Honestly, are you good with that, Jake?
Yeah.
I'm good with it too.
I wouldn't be good with literally any offensive lineman that you guys suggested.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Rams. They need corner really badly, but I don't know if Benjamin Morrison, if they think he's healthy, would make sense. Trey Amos could be off the board here. Would they take another edge to pair with Verse? Because I don't know if they view Young as that like surefire starter opposite of him. I could see that.
Yeah. Or
they're a tough team.
Would be a reach here, but you did just get things were definitely rocky with Stafford this year or this off season. Do you draft Milroe here?
He did get him
for a little bit.
He did get a first-round invitation.
So I do want to make a trade, by the way, to come up and get him at some point, by the way. I think we should do that for the sake of if they're right about why he was invited. But I don't know if the Rams might. I don't know if the Rams would take him straight up. That's a good question, though. Could this be a Maxwell Harrison spot, Dalton?
With Morrison still on the board, I think he makes more sense. But unless if you really hate Morrison's medicals,
because I keep hearing Harrison's a first rounder. I keep hearing from people.
I could see it. I could also see Amos here. But I think if you're gonna reach on a corner, Ravel maybe.
I was actually about to say I think this maybe Ravel instead.
Like if you're gonna draft a day 2 corner.
I would like Ravel.
Yeah, because like Hairston, just if you like Hairston, just wait a little bit, or move back, or move down.
True. I like Ravel going off the board in
Yeah.
the first round.
Ravel is a guy you take here if you love him and you're convinced someone
Yeah.
else is going to take him.
So
Yeah.
wouldn't be shocked if old Ravens here did something like that. Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. I think Walter Nolan's the pick here simply because he's lasted this long and the Ravens do this shit. They're like, oh, this player didn't get drafted as early as he probably should have.
Cool.
We'll take him. Why
Yeah,
not?
You know who else is like that?
Mike Green.
Mike Green.
Mike Green.
I was gonna say migraine.
But here's the
Mike
thing.
Green
I was
also-
kind of hoping that the Commanders would get him at 29. So
Yeah, man, like the
Selfishly.
Ravens love a productive defensive player with a checkered past.
that's yeah. You know what?
They love it.
You're
so
right.
much.
You're right.
They love it so much.
You're right.
It checks all the boxes.
You're right.
How many times have you been brought in by the police for questioning? The Packers have all these measurements. For the Ravens, it's just arrested on suspicion.
Have you been
How many
detained
times?
before?
Have you been detained by the police?
No. Get out of my building.
How many police lineups have you been in?
And then for getting into Georgia, it's how fast were you going on the way here to meet with us?
Oh, you drove the
So-
speed limit?
Get out of here. You stopped and helped a pedestrian. Don't even fucking talk to me right now.
You stopped and changed someone's tire on the side of the road?
Undraftable. You can't even look at you with a scholarship. Get out of my face.
But also, Mike Green, like from a football perspective, on the Ravens defense just does not feel fair.
Yeah, well, trust me, I'm aware.
I like migraine here.
Yeah, unfortunately, I do too. Lions. Edge? Question mark. Scorton would make sense to me.
Love Gordon here.
Maybe Ezeraku.
Shamar Stewart could be the team that's like, we'll take the upside play and play him opposite Aiden Hutchinson, who might be the most unlike player to Shamar Stewart to ever play football.
Tyler Booker's interesting here just because like
True,
they could
like
use
that
some
too.
help,
Yeah.
and they're a team that is more pass heavy.
And their power run game a lot of the time too.
Yeah,
So like he fits
Booker
that.
actually feels like really good, and he does. I think would probably be one of the better players available here for me at this point.
We could, though, I have to put it out there. We could take the ultimate kneecap biter of all time.
If someone takes Cam Scatterboo,
Hey, respect first round Cam Scatterboo. Respect first round Cam Scatterboo.
unless
No, if he goes in the first round, I would be like, I don't even know what I'm gonna say.
Even if the Lions did
Shayne,
it,
I kind of hope that happens on
Yeah.
Thursday. Just
even
so
if the Lions do it, I'd be like, I don't know,
did
man.
he get any top 30 visits?
Oh, he got plenty of top 30.
he did. But-
Are they allowed to make guys run 40s on those?
Well, he ran with like a 4.65 at his pro day, I think.
Because you'd have to. I feel like if you were gonna bring him in for a visit, you'd be like, we have to
I
see
need
you
to see
run 40 yards in a straight line and time you
Yeah.
before we can even think about drafting you. I'm sorry, sir.
Yeah,
we
no,
need
I
to
I
see
think,
it.
I think he ran a 4.65. Is what it was at his
Oh,
pro
is
day.
that what he ran in his pro day?
I think so. Yeah,
that
Yikes.
feels about
that feels
right.
about right.
Yeah, but that's not a run. That's not an NFL running back.
Well, we'll find
Just
out.
UC.
I actually really like the idea of Shamar Stewart because the
I do
Lions
too.
just be like, let's just take the big swing opposite of Hutchinson because if nothing else, as long as Hutchinson's healthy, we're still gonna have a good pass rush.
Fair.
Yeah, good run defender.
That's fair.
Scorton also I like.
I think
At
who's
edge.
the other guy we said?
Booker.
Yeah.
I'm good with him. I'm good with any of those. So it's really just kind of where you guys are at with it.
I kind of like Stewart.
I kind of do too.
They can afford to take the swing on it.
They
Yeah.
can. Commanders, Omarion Hampton. Juice
makes
up the run
sense.
game with Jaden Daniels.
I would.
Yeah.
Austin
I would
Eckler
like
can't
him
play
here,
anymore. He
actually.
bad. Brian Robinson Jr. Good compliment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If not him,
I'd
they
probably
did-
go Hampton.
They did let Jonathan Allen go. They do have guys still in the interior, but Walter Nolan's fallen this far.
Yeah.
Would make a lot of
Booker
sense.
would be a good spot. This would be a decent spot for Booker here too, just because.
Yeah, that's true.
Protect Jaden Daniels.
Mm-hmm. Make a lot of sense. Gray Zabel, even for those who enjoy Gray Zabel. Could see him. I already have a plan for Gray Zabel. Don't you worry. I already have a thought. For me, I think it would be between Amir Hampton and an edge like a Nick Scorton, or even I know we're not quite as high on a Donovan Esraku, someone like that they hope can come in and immediately make an impact as an edge rusher.
I think that O'Marion Hampton and Jaden Daniels would be really.
Oh, it'd be disgusting, probably. So
I would probably go Hampton here.
What do you think, Dalton?
Hampton feels a little high here, but I'm okay with it. I'm okay with Hampton here.
I mean, that's the fun pick, so sometimes you gotta have fun, you know.
Yeah.
Hey, they ate their vegetables. They traded for Laramie Tunsil. They traded. Okay, Debo Samuel's not eating your vegetables, but they traded for Debo Samuel. You know, they did stuff. You think of Aaron Hampton. Bills feels like a Trey Emo spot for sure. I could also see like a Benjamin Morrison if they like the health, obviously.
Yeah.
I
find
could
hard
see,
to believe he's gonna fall out of the first, like he falls out of the first
I don't think
round.
he should, but like,
I just see
man,
Morrison here.
the injuries things with him, it's like there's a couple different ones. NFL teams don't like risk. Yeah, that's kind of my thing. I will say if I was a GM, I don't know if you guys would feel the same way. If I was a GM, you better believe I'm taking every player that's good. I don't care if they have no knees. I'm going to take a shot anyway because I saw him be good, and then I'm probably going to get fired real fast. But I'm still doing it anyway. So I get it with Morrison for sure. And I mean, honestly, do we think it's too early for a Tyreek Williams? Because they need beef if they're taking a defensive tackle.
I think a little.
I think it's early too, but like, could they just be like, we need somebody that's big?
I mean, these teams are in the spot where they can kind of
take whatever they want.
Take risks
how
like
many
that,
of these
you know?
guys
So I'm not
far apart on the board right now?
If this was early for a team that couldn't take risks like that, I'd be more against it. But I'd be kind of open to it at 30. I mean,
is this also where we think about them possibly being a team?
Oh no, they should
back.
trade out. They should trade out. You're right.
And this could be the Milrow pick.
Yep, way to go. Really smart. Okay, we doing Browns or Giants? Probably Browns or Raiders.
Browns.
Raiders
do? The Raiders wouldn't invest like draft capital into trading up for a guy to sit behind a guy they already traded a third round pick to get.
And the Raiders are also not like I think 10 picks after this.
That's true.
Yeah. I feel like he's still if we're trading, he obviously wouldn't still be there, but
yeah.
I like the Browns, I think.
Yeah, I think the Browns make the most sense. Same thing with the Giants where it's like
I really don't want to watch Kenny Pickett play football in 2025.
Dude, me too. Maybe against the Steelers, I'll watch him play football.
Yeah.
Maybe
no, that's when he's going to go off.
No, you're right. That's what would happen. We let Bailey Zappi beat us like 2 years ago. I'm not going to ever let that one down. I think the Browns would make the most sense. I think the Giants, one, again, I don't know if they want to be the team to take a swing on a quarterback in the first round. Also, as I always say, Jalen Milrow doesn't exactly fit the archetype that the Giants would prefer a quarterback typically. You know, he's not very big. He's not very tall. He's not very he doesn't need probably sunscreen as much as maybe,
they're more of a Jackson Dart type.
Yeah, they're more of a Jackson Dart type, a Kyle McCord, a Will Howard. I don't know about Dylan Gabriel actually.
Allegedly there's at least one GM that has Tyler Shug as the number one quarterback on their board.
Tyler Shuck. It would be the Giants for sure.
He's also at least one team has him as the best on their board.
I love it. I love that. It's probably the Browns. No, I was kidding.
Louis Riddick would love if Tyler Shuck.
94. Yeah, give the Bills their own pick back, and then maybe the Bills throw 132. Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
Boom. Give me the
3
fast
QB
man.
first round.
3 QB. Hey, if the over-under's 2.5, hit over.
Yep.
I actually think the Chiefs, despite my belly aching about them wanting to take a tackle, I think they would take Walter Nolan if he's on the board. I think they would, because he's still on the board.
At this point, he's still there, so
I think they would take him.
some
Yeah.
help there.
Maybe.
So.
I
feel like
don't think he
after
gets out
the
of the
Super
first
Bowl,
round.
though,
Yeah.
True, but I don't think he gets out of the first round. So if we're doing predictive, I think you got to
That's
take him in the
fair.
first
I don't
round.
know.
I wouldn't complain about Nolan here.
Yeah.
I definitely.
Plus, the Chiefs are like, if there is any off-field concerns or like
If
any of
he
that
fell
stuff
to
I'm
the
hearing,
Chiefs-
they don't give a shit about that.
Oh
No.
my god.
You know what I mean? They don't give a shit. They could
Yeah.
care less.
I know we're not gonna do this. I've been
Yeah.
mocking Ursary to the Chiefs a lot. It just feels
I know.
really
But hey,
Right.
with where he's at on the consensus board, he might be there with their second round picks.
Yeah.
fair.
So you might be able to swing around and get him still. So
Yeah, no.
No, I'm
Now,
good with Nolan.
this is where I
I feel
have
like you can go anywhere.
personally Gray Zabel going off the board because he's a guy that's consensus in the top, I think 30. He's a guy can play a lot of positions for them. They love the offensive lineman type. Like obviously they want to like have as many of those guys as they can. And it would be very Eagles for them to just be like, oh, a guy that's really, really talented that blew up the Senior Bowl that is high on consensus boards with Phil because he's an interior offensive lineman. We'll take him at 32. Thanks, rest of the league. That's what it feels like with him.
Yeah.
That's
Also,
my 2 cents.
Yeah. I'll say this. I feel like Elik Ayumanor is the Cooper DeJean of wide receivers.
Well, if that's the case, then they're going to trade up in the second round for him. Then they're just going to trade up in the second round for him. If he's the Cooper DeJean of wide receivers, that's really funny. I like that. No, but I can see them. I just feel like this is the type of thing that happens to the Eagles, similarly to the Ravens, where it's like, there's this really good player, really talented player that everyone just kind of didn't take for different reasons. We'll just take them.
Is that Scorton though?
Could be Scorton as well. For sure.
Scorton really fits their mold. Like I feel like all of their defensive linemen, their entire front seven just looks like Nick Scorton. Or their entire front four is just Nick Scorton already.
It's like, wait, Nick Scorton's over there, but I thought he's over there too? Wait a minute. What number is he? No. I wanted to look this up real quick because I thought I saw this earlier and I don't remember. Odds to be. So according to the NFL, I don't know where this comes from specifically, so give me a second. But as of today, the betting odds have Gray Zabel is minus 2,000 odds to go in the first round. This is what I saw earlier today. I don't know if I believe that, actually, but that's what I saw earlier today. So I kind of want to get him off the board if that's what they're saying.
I mean, I could definitely see that.
Is Howie willing to take another North Dakota State guy?
Hey, listen. Technically, it worked.
Yeah.
Technically, it worked.
For a little bit.
He got him most of the way there.
But it got him there.
Yeah, he got him most of the way there. And then because he was so bad, they felt the need to take a quarterback in the second round. And then that became the quarterback they have. So if you think about it, it's actually Carson Wentz. It's his entire – he was the only reason they won Super Bowl.
They won 2 Super Bowls because of Carson Wentz.
Yes, I think I can revisionist history my way to that point. So I would say that's even more likely that they take him. I just like the fit. I think he could play guard right away. I think he could even be like – well, Juergens signed an extension, which is cool. But I think he could be a long-term guard for them.
They love a utility-style offensive lineman.
They do. So I definitely want to get him off the board here. Wow. So that was our we earned an award. All right. So this is our first round mock, everybody. Take a look at it. Will we be right about most of this? Probably not.
I hope Starks doesn't fall that far.
I hope so too, but it's very possible with him because safety one not really thought of as a huge, disposition. Unfortunately, in the NFL, despite why do we got to do this? Anyway, I don't want to be big on the screen. Can we? All right. Anyway, Restream decided to switch things up on me, I guess, layout-wise. Anyway, I do think that realistically Stark should go in somewhere in like the top 15, honestly, to me. I don't know if he will. I think some teams are going to be like, you can play slot, but we don't care about that. It's like, why don't you? This is 2025. You earn nickel so much. Why do you not care about?
Also, in a league that already has Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Brock Bowers, and now is going to also have Tyler Warren, I feel like that's the kind of guy you need.
I agree. Also, I apologize. We've kept all of you and also the two of you here for 2.5 hours, but it is the last show before draft, so I'll accept it. But I think it was a lot of fun. Now, again, how predictive was that ultimately? I don't know if anybody feels good about the predicted mocks this year because after the first 3 picks, most people were like, I don't know, we'll try stuff. I can see a lot of things. I will say if Shadur Sanders is on the board at 21, Jake and I are probably going to have an absolute stroke about it because I'm like, what is going to happen here? Are they going to actually take him? Are they going to move? Are they not? And then if they don't, when does he get taken?
Wait for Thursday.
It's be so insane. So we're gonna have a lot of guests for that. It'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Before Thursday, though, if you want to bet on any of these draft picks, we're gonna be giving out a lot of draft-related betting picks.
We will
on the
Over the line. Yep.
On Wednesday night at 9:30.
Yes, definitely check that out.
Same
we'll
channel,
be using
Over the Line, Degenerate Sports Network. Check it out.
Absolutely. Good job shouting that out, though, because that is going to be a fun one. We're going to be doing draft bets, a lot of them. I already have a couple in mind. It's going to be a real interesting one because if we're going off our own predictive mock, there's a couple that I basically lied to you all about of how I think. But we'll see. It's going to be a lot of fun, though. I think the odds for this draft especially are going to get real weird. There's some juicy stuff with that. So chance to make either a lot of money or get absolutely destroyed. And it could be either way. Who knows? So that'll be a lot of fun. But, yeah, definitely check us out on Wednesday night. Again, Thursday night we'll be here. I'm shooting to kick things off around 7:30-ish if Jake's good to go by then.
Yeah, I'll be at my desk the whole day. So.
Awesome. So, yeah, we're going to try to shoot a little bit before the draft, kind of have a pre-draft talk. We'll get everyone set up. Again, we will have several guests, some of which you've seen on this channel. Casey could be on, who is the host of our betting show. He may be on for his Niners pick. So if they make that big trade, I'll be like, Casey, get in here, Casey. What are they doing? It's gonna be a lot of fun. We'll have a lot of guests hopefully popping in and out. But that'll do it for us this week, and we'll be back again on Thursday. Again, check us out on Wednesday as well on the same channel here, and subscribe and like if you guys see us on YouTube here. We definitely want to keep building that up and keep a lookout for everything coming your way. So have a good night. See you guys.